Starting with the battered VHS tape, this story comes from a person on Reddit who claims that the story is true. It starts by them saying that one time in the mid to late 90s, they had a famous relative who would get a lot of fan mail, most of which was just photographs of their dogs, friendship pendants, etc. Not super weird stuff, but some a little creepy and almost stalkerish. Like they said one day, a padded envelope arrived and in it was a battered home movie tape with a handwritten label on it. Now they said they never heard of the title, but considered themselves to be a movie buff, so thought that they would just give it a go. They said a few days later they were alone in the house for the night and they thought, you know, what better time to watch this movie? So they locked the doors, got a blanket, made some popcorn, even their stuffed teddy, and pressed play. They said what followed was one of the most terrifying and traumatic experiences of their life. The film was fuzzy and filmed on handheld cameras like a home movie. They said it ran for about 2 hours and they were scared out of their mind the entire time. So the person on Reddit went on to say that this movie ended up being the Blair Witch Project. But the creepy thing is that Blair Witch wouldn't actually come out in theaters for another 3 to 4 months. So this to him was very much real and scary, and people in the comments assume that whoever sent him this tape had to have, been a friend or a family member who worked in the film industry to have their hands on it. Now the writer on Reddit said to them, this was as real as it could get. They didn't watch it in theaters, around people. They watched it in the dark by themselves in their home, months before Blair Witch became, well, Blair Witch. I mean, arguably Blair Witch is the flagship for found footage, and love it or hate it, it still terrifies people to this day. I know it scared me, and when I watched it as a kid in theater, so I could imagine how scared he was. Number 2 is the white tapes of Japan. Now in Japan, a series of VHS tapes known as the white tapes, or known as the Shiroi VTR, were said to be cursed, bringing misfortune and terror to those who watched them. The tapes, which were reportedly created by a mysterious individual or group, contained strange and disturbing footage, including images of ghosts, demons, and other supernatural entities. Now one viewer who reported watching one of the white tapes claimed to have experienced a series of terrifying and unexplained events, including strange noises, movements, and even physical attacks by an unseen force. The white tapes, apparently originated in Japan in the 1980s and are believed to have actually derived from a city there named Osaka. The tapes are said to contain extremely strange and disturbing images, like close-up of eyes, mouths, teeth, and other body parts that are often, distorted or manipulated in some way or the other. Mysterious symbols, codes, and writings will usually appear on screen, often in conjunction with the unsettling images. Now, fragments of stories or scenes that seem to honestly make no sense at all often feature people of characters in severe distress, and according to legend, anyone who watches the white tapes will be cursed with a series of terrifying and unexplained events, such as nightmares and visions. A lot of viewers have reported experiencing very vivid and disturbing dreams. Some people believe, the white tapes are a form of psychological warfare or a hoax designed to just manipulate and frighten those who watch. Some have even thought that they might be a portal to another dimension. Number 3, the ghost tape of the Stanley Hotel. The Stanley Hotel in Colorado is said to be haunted by the ghost of its former owner, F.O. Stanley. Now, in the 1980s, a VHS tape was discovered in the hotel's basement, which was said to contain footage of the hotel's ghostly apparitions. Now, however, viewers who watched the tape reported experiencing very strange phenomena, including unexplained noises, movements, and even some physical harm. One viewer who reported watching the tape claimed to have experienced a series of just terrifying and unexplained events, strange noises happening, movements suddenly around them, and even physical attacks by an unseen force. Now, the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park in Colorado is renowned as one of the most haunted hotels in the entire United States. The hotel has become a well-known location for paranormal activity, with guests and employees alike reporting strange occurrences. The hotel gained further notoriety after Stephen King and his wife stayed in room 217 in 1974, which actually inspired the novel and movie The Shining, solidifying its reputation as a haunted place. This room is said to be haunted by the spirit of Mrs. Elizabeth Wilson, the head housekeeper who actually passed in an explosion during a snowstorm. Guests have reported lights turning on and off, objects moving on their own, and even cold spots. And and many suggest that a portal, hovering over the grand staircase is the cause of numerous hauntings. Guests report hearing, children's laughter on the fourth floor with no one actually present there. Flora Stanley, the hotel owner's wife, is rumored to play the piano in the concert hall. Now, the Stanley Hotel has been investigated by numerous paranormal teams, including those, from Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures and Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters, so check that out. Number 4, the cursed tape of the Dibbuk Box. Now, in 2004, a VHS tape was discovered in a mysterious box known as the Dibbuk Box, which was said to be cursed by a malevolent spirit. Now, the tape, which contained strange and very disturbing footage, was reportedly created by a mysterious individual and was said to bring misfortune and terror to anyone who watched it. So one viewer who reported watching the tape claimed to have experienced a series of terrifying and just unexplained events. Again, a lot of strange noises in the house, movements around them, and sometimes, yes, physical attacks on them as well. Now, this whole thing actually started back in 2003, though, a year earlier, when a man named Jason Haxton won an online auction for the box and received it. I think it was on eBay. He said, the day it arrived, I put my hands on it, and it almost feels like the thing collapses into a liquid state. I feel like a is coming into my gut. I'm paralyzed in pain. When I go to bed, I have terrible dreams of a hag that seems to come with the box. Haxton said he first heard about the box from a colleague whose roommate had listed it for sale after bizarre experiences, including hair loss and smelling bad odors that he associated with a Dibbuk. Now, the box owner put it on eBay, and according to the listing, the person selling the piece had purchased it in September of 2001 at an Oregon estate sale of a war survivor who passed away at 103 years old. The listing stated the woman got the wine cabinet while living in Spain, and it was among the few things she brought with her when she immigrated to America after the war. Haxton only paid $280 for the box, which, instead of wine, contained a goblet, 2 locks of hair tied with string, pennies from the 1920s, a dried rosebud, a cast iron candlestick holder, and a granite statue engraved with gilded Hebrew letters. Haxton said, he didn't believe the stories associated with the box since he was too, science-based, but he then of course began experiencing what he has called just a tidal wave of bad luck. And last but not least, number 5, the haunted tape of the Blair Witch. It's a legend centered around the 19th century Bell family of Robertson County, Tennessee, who were allegedly haunted by an entity known as the Blair Witch, which caused various frightening phenomena for years. The tape and cave are actually part of the Blair Witch Cave, which is a real place near the Bell family homestead where locals report, being attacked and where potential human remains and bones have been found. Now, starting in 1817, the family and the surrounding area experienced a very long series of strange and frightening occurrences, physical manifestations, people speaking, apparently shape-shifting, all supposedly caused by an entity referred to as the Blair Witch. Now, a cave located near the original Bell homestead, which is known as Blair Witch Cave, is now associated with the legend as well. Now, some accounts suggest visitors to the cave report experiencing paranormal activity, strange noises, all that fun stuff. Now, John Bell Sr., the head of the family, is said to have mysteriously passed away after being haunted by the Blair Witch for several years, with some accounts suggesting poisoning as the cause of his death, but who knows? Now, the story of the Blair Witch legend has inspired various forms of media, including films, documentaries, and even podcasts. There's a few movies you can watch, one from 2004 called The Blair Witch Haunting, which is a found footage horror film, and one from 2013 owning the same name. So check those out if you're interested. A photo of a Polaroid photo found in someone's basement that was posted to Reddit about 8 years ago had a lot of people spooked, stunned, and wanting more answers. A Reddit user by the name of Ace Flores posted a photo of a scratched up Polaroid picture he found in the basement of his vacation home that had the writing on it, "Do you see him?" He said he found it while cleaning out his family vacation home, and he said he tried cleaning the picture as much as he could, but it was really scratched up, so it didn't make a difference. He said he can't even really see anything, just an outline of a house, and didn't see an outline of a person. He left the thread by saying he will try to look for more. Now, he came back to his post after some time and said that people in Discord have pointed out that when enhanced, there appears appears to be something, to which people said, yeah, it looks like a silhouette of a man. One person commented saying, when you do see him, it will be too late, with another person saying, seems like you might be trapped in a horror movie. Don't worry, stay smart and escape. Whatever it is or isn't, I'm not actually sure. I want to find out. Pretty creepy. A Reddit post by someone named Cyborg Stranger posted 2 years ago a chilling item found in a chest of drawers that they put in their basement after originally buying it at a local thrift store. So as you can see by the photo in the picture, what we're looking at is what appears to literally be someone's hair, maybe a child. It looks to be about 2 or 3 different braided locks with kind of green and blue hair ties. It's quite creepy, honestly, and people have mixed feelings about this one. One person said parents often save some hair from their children's first haircut, or maybe it's after a child had passed. It's either sweet or now you have ghosts. Now someone added to their comment saying, it's so weird. I saved the hair from my kid's first haircut. I don't even know why. I was even like, this is weird, but I still kept it and just hid it in a spare room closet. I'd like to make it into a bracelet or something, but I can't deny it's a weird human impulse. Another person just simply asked, do you want ghosts? Cause that's how you get ghosts. Honestly, I would have thrown the whole thing away cause ain't no way I'm keeping that. A very creepy collection of dolls was found in the basement of an elderly lady's home. A person on Reddit shared their story of a time they were invited into the home of someone they know, or maybe they don't know. Honestly, the post is kind of unclear, but they wrote that they were invited into an elderly lady's home, and when they asked if they could use the washroom, the lady said sure, go downstairs to the basement. The person went into the basement, and on the wall in the bathroom facing the toilet was a shelf with a collection of creepy porcelain dolls and just other items. Now there seemed to be a stand holding a blue kind of doll's dress, a wicker chair fit in size for, said dolls, and another stand holding a straw floral hat, again for the dolls. You can also see shoes for the dolls laying around. I mean, it's really creepy, yes, but also I think the better question is, why is this in the washroom in the basement? That's just super weird to me. I actually had a fascination with porcelain dolls when I was a kid, so like sure, relatable a little bit, but like I kept them in my room, and of course because I have attachment issues, I still have them. Now one person commented on this story and said, honestly, getting old sucks. I think she's probably pretty cool. The OP responded by saying, yeah, it does. I mean, she invited me inside after we finished up some paperwork. I let her know how appreciative I was about letting me into her home, but she needs to be more careful and less trusting. She was 80 years old, and when she came outside, the wind almost blew her away. Another person, however, said, this is how horror movies start, get out now. A terrifying mask was found under someone's bedroom floor in the basement. Now a person on Reddit shared their very creepy story, so buckle up. The poster said, my husband was pulling out the floorboards and found this graved mask. It's very much a doom mask. No doubt it's a plaster cast, and I'm sure the person must have passed on, or at least unconscious, because one of the eyelids was very slightly open when the imprint of the face was made. It's a middle-aged woman. It looks like she had no eyebrows, but no other distinctive sign. Nothing is written on the cast. There's only a little hook at the back that looks like the mask could be mounted on a wall. The house I live in is a classic Victorian house that was converted into flats a while ago. I don't know how it ended up under the floor. There wasn't anything specific next to it, only gravel and soil. The whole thing is very mysterious. I don't know what to do with it. Would it be bad luck to sell it? I don't know how else to dispose of it. I'm not too keen on keeping it, obviously. It's super creepy. It is really creepy looking. People, of course, took to the comment section to share their thoughts. One person said, that's incredibly interesting to me. I bet if you have a local shop for obscurities and oddities, they'd love to have this. Well, I mean, I personally wouldn't buy it, would you? Let me know. A sealed tight door found in a new homeowner's basement was discovered and made the buyer rethink buying the property. A person on Reddit named Brett Kelman said he had just bought a house, but found a very creepy sealed tight door in the basement that he couldn't open and had no clue what could possibly be inside. In his story, he shared how he was so concerned about what was there or inside, or maybe even where it could lead to. But then in an update, he said 10 years ago, the stairs in front of the house collapsed in a tornado. The then owner used the opportunity to rebuild the stairs with a tornado shelter underneath. However, once the shelter was built, he became concerned that if the house collapsed in a storm, he might be trapped in the shelter. As some have suggested, the hatch truly is an emergency exit. Now, the eye bolts make the hatch too strong to break open from outside, outside, but can easily be removed to escape from within if the house crumbles while you're in the shelter. Now, the builder saw this thread actually on Reddit, then looked the person up on Twitter, found the contact info to send the explanation. So it's a small world. He shared that in an additional update and said, "I've solved the mystery of the basement hatch. It is more underwhelming than I've ever imagined. It just goes outside behind the bushes." Well, a satisfying ending maybe, maybe not. I bet some of you were hoping it would lead to another world or portal. Either way, it's still a very disturbing discovery to find when you think about what could have been behind that door. A now deleted post on Reddit tells the story of a new homeowner who purchased a house, and when they went downstairs to the basement, they discovered a hidden basement room with a locked door, but also the previous owner blocked the door off with a shelf. The OP said horror movies have taught him not to try and open the door, and that his dogs refused to go near the door, so he definitely was not planning on opening it. Now, people in the comments begged him to. One person said, "Obviously everyone on Reddit is going to want you to open the door, and your fears are probably justified, but I think I have a plan that can accommodate both issues." He said that OP should hire someone on Craigslist to come and open it while wearing a GoPro. Also suggested standing by with a weapon in case something lunged out at him. Another person shared their theories and said, "I'm going to make an educated guess. If the bank owned the house between the last owner and yourself, chances are it's full of crap a property preservation company was supposed to throw away but hid instead. If it was a direct purchase from the previous owner to you, it's probably full of bodies whose spirits are now unlocked and are going to trap you inside that room so they can escape. Think of yourself as an offering." Well, I hate to leave you like this, but till today OP has never opened the door, so I guess we'll never know. The Black Forest in Germany. A photograph purportedly showing Germany's Black Forest is frequently circulated on social media, along with the claim that the wooded area caused 15,000 missing persons cases last year. While some people have challenged the picture and said it's fake news, others have openly discussed the topic and argued that there may be a lot of truth to it because it's been alleged that an unusually high number of people have in fact gone missing there. The Black Forest in Germany is known for its dense woodlands, picturesque landscapes, and folklore, but it has also been associated with various disappearances over the years that have basically turned into cold cases. While some stories and legends highlight mysterious cases, the region is not particularly notorious for ongoing disappearances. Now, most reported cases are often related to hiking accidents, lost individuals, or people who have chosen to go off the grid. The forest's vastness and, rugged terrain can make it easy for people to just become disoriented or lost. Additionally, the area has a very high, rich history of myths and legends, which can sometimes exaggerate the perception of danger or mystery. One particular case of a missing person is that of a woman named Scarlett. Scarlett was a student at Bad Lippensprungen, which is North Rhine-Westphalia, who traveled to the Black Forest area on September 4th, 2020 to go on a 74-mile hike. She's very slim, long blonde hair, and was wearing a red backpack, very noticeable. Now, the hike along there is obviously done in multiple stages. Scarlett had successfully completed the first 5 out of 6 stages when she disappeared and had spent the night at a hotel. Now, the town, that marks the starting point of the last stage of the hike. This last confirmed sighting of her was at 10:10 a.m. on the 10th of September. Scarlett was filmed by surveillance cameras while shopping at a supermarket. Now, she also sent a text message through WhatsApp to her family. It is not known, if she actually, started the planned stage of the hike that day, since her phone was last located in Totmos. Now, what's unusual about this last sighting is that there are witnesses for the other days and stages of her hike, but not for this one. Police, family members, volunteers search extensively for Scarlett using drones, helicopters, and manned trailers, but nothing has been found. No traces of an accident, any of her equipment or supplies, just nothing. The police are still looking for witnesses, but their main theory seems to be that some sort of accident happened. It has been said that the only way she hasn't been found if it was an accident, so would be, if Scarlett left the main path as well. Yosemite National Park. Some people are born for the outdoors, and Michael Fiercery was one of them. This man pushed aside a conventional lifestyle to live one of adventure and exploration. In 2005, he decided to take a hike solo through Yosemite National Park, and not just the touristy areas, of Yosemite either, but the parts reserved for the very hardcore adventures. Michael was very independent and liked to live off the grid, so it wasn't until, his wilderness permit expired that people realized something was terribly wrong. A massive search was instigated basically, and even involved the Marines. Now, they quickly found Michael's backpack, which spelled very bad news and greatly concerned his family, of course. Unfortunately, no other trace of Michael has ever been found. This park is responsible for a lot of people having gone missing. One person on Reddit shared their experience and said on their first trip there, they were hiking up to the mist trail with a crowd in the morning. Someone started taking pictures of something on the hill on the left side of the path, not the side with the view. So naturally, everyone passing stopped and started looking. Just above the path was a baby bear, just vibing, walking around, super cute. It eventually started walking back up the hill, and that's when the weird thing happened. Two boys, probably around 10 or 11 years old, just started walking up the hill after the bear. Now off the path into the bush, no parent yelling after them, no one was with them, not even a parent standing around, you know, that spot on the path, like asking if anyone saw where their kids went. No idea what became of this. The person jokingly said, hopefully the mama bear, you know, took them in as one of their own and they now live as bears, but the best possible income would be that. So it's not just unexplained disappearances that happen there, but other weird, unexplainable things as well. Grand Canyon National Park. This national park is a vast mile-deep canyon carved by the Colorado River over millions of years, showcasing a unique geological history and diverse ecosystems in northwestern Arizona. The canyon's formation began approximately 6 million years ago with the Colorado River carving its way through the Colorado Plateau. Now the canyon is up to 18 miles wide and 6,000 feet deep in some places. The time of this disappearance, Morgan Heimer was working for a rafting company called Tour West, which provided guided tours through the Grand Canyon. On day 6 of an 8-day trip, Heimer vanished in the Pumpkin Springs area of the park. The lead guide was speaking to Heimer when he was distracted by a client. When he went to speak to Heimer again, the young man was just gone. The guide didn't think much of it at first, believing Heimer had simply just wandered off, but when 3 hours had gone by without a word, Heimer was officially declared missing. An extensive search lasting 6 days was carried out, but to no avail. Great Smoky Mountains National Park. One of the most famous missing person stories involving a forest is the disappearance of Dennis Lloyd Martin in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in 1969. Now, Dennis Lloyd Martin, a 6-year-old boy, vanished on June 14th, 1969, while on a family outing at Spence Field in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Martin disappeared on June 14th while surprising his adults with actually his brother and other children from a separate family the Martins were camping with. He was last seen by his father going behind a bush to hide, intending on surprising the adults with the other children. Now, after not seeing him for about 5 minutes, and when all of the other children had returned to the campsite, his father became concerned and began searching for him. His father ran down the trail for nearly 2 miles until he was sure he could not have gotten any farther. Now, after several hours, they sought help from National Park Service rangers, and the search effort was extensive, involving approximately 1,400 searchers and covering a 56 square mile area, but no trace of Dennis was ever found. The disappearance does remain a cold case, with the National Park Service still investigating to this day. Green Mountain National Forest. The Green Mountain National Forest, or GMNF, is the only federally managed national forest in Vermont, encompassing over 400,000 acres in southwestern and central Vermont, offering very diverse landscapes, wildlife, and recreation opportunities. Now, the Vermont State Police exists because of Paula Jean Weldon. Weldon was an 18-year-old college student who decided to walk the long trail in Vermont. Weldon hitchhiked from school to the trail, and when she failed to return for her studies, her roommate notified the administrators. They in turn, contacted the authorities, and a massive search for Weldon was undertaken. It involved the National Guard, firefighters, and even students from the school, which had closed to help in the search. But despite the extensiveness, nothing came of it, and the resulting investigation was fiercely criticized for being shoddy. Just 7 months later, the Vermont State Police was created to prevent such poorly run investigations in the future. Paula Jean was never found. Her family is still searching for answers. The community still wants to know what happened, and sadly, I don't think anyone ever will know. This is not the first and only case, though. It's been reported that this forest is responsible for the disappearance of an upwards of 20 plus people within the last 20 years alone. Ozark-St National Forest in Arkansas. Many of the biggest national park disappearances start the same way. A family or group visits a national park, one member wanders, and no trace of them is ever found. It's an unsettling pattern that has led to many, of the monster stories that surround these national parks. It's also exactly what the poor Van Els family experienced on a summer day in Ozark-St. Francis National Park in 1946. 8-year-old Catherine Van Els was playing with her siblings in the woods near her campsite. The brothers looked away for just a moment, and suddenly she was just gone. While many national park mysteries are there, or end there, should I say, Catherine's story somehow gets stranger. A huge search was launched, combing every mile of the forest. 6 days after her disappearance, volunteers wandered by a cave 30 miles from where Catherine went went missing. Out crawled little Catherine, who casually just waved and said, "Here I am." Catherine had very little memory of the last 6 days, mentioning she ate berries and drank water from the cave. She made very odd remarks about sleeping in warm grass and finding herself in the cave, and always seemed very, calm about the whole ordeal, which was weird. Search and rescue teams were equally as confused. They had searched the exact area with equipment and dogs twice. Why had Catherine not been found on either of those previous sweeps? As strange as the circumstances are, the Van Els family got a rare happy ending to their National Park missing persons case. Jefferson, Texas, in eastern Texas near the Arkansas and Louisiana borders, would-be ghost hunters will run across the town of Jefferson and the haunted Jefferson Hotel. It's been in operation since the late 1800s. This historic hotel and one-time brothel has borne witness to a healthy dose of Texas history. The hotel started recording the guests' encounters with the ghost hauntings, its rooms and corridors, like the vanishing man, who comes and goes and stomps around as he pleases in the hotel's Book of the Deceased. Now, a stay here could have you bumping into all kinds of tormented souls, including Judy, an adult entertainment worker, likely unalived in the hotel, allegedly. She now writes her name in the condensed steam left on mirrors after patrons take a hot shower. This hotel is known as the most haunted hotel in the world. Talk about terrifying, right? Burke, Idaho. Now, Burke is a nearly abandoned mining town that kind of boomed in the latter part of the 19th century, then later went bust. The settlement, wedged into an exceptionally narrow mountain valley, is 300 feet across at its most constricted point. The lack of space forced the railroad to run down the main street and forced builders to get creative when designing buildings able to fit into such a confined space. Now, due to a very violent history plagued by fights and basically dynamite sabotage between mine owners and labor, plus the passings caused by just, avalanches, locals might advise avoiding Burke at night. Of course, if you happen to be looking for a run-in with a ghost or two, nighttime is when the deceased apparently come out to play. Bangor, Maine. Now, one of Bangor's most famous residents, author Stephen King, dwells in a mansion here. Now, that's surely reason enough to include Bangor on my list of creepy towns. Mount Hope Cemetery, where a college-age King used to hang out, is another great reason to go. King is said to have come up with character names and some of his scariest story ideas here. Now, scenes from the 1989 film adaptation of Pet Sematary were even actually filmed at this site. The cemetery, founded in 1836, is one of the first garden cemeteries to ever open in the United States. Mount Hope Cemetery Corp and Crematory has a well-earned reputation for being haunted, with reports of apparitions, shadows, and even children's voices. Mount Hope is full of old, distinctive tombstones that inspired one of America's most famous authors, a writer who has spent his career, creeping out a nation and a planet with his horrifying tales. Seward, Alaska. Seward is home to ruins of one of the most tragic incarnations of the Jesse Lee Home for Children. While other orphanages of the same name have operated in Alaska, this location, abandoned after 1964's Great Alaskan Earthquake, which by the way had a magnitude of 9.2, has an exceptionally unfortunate history. Apparently, the ghosts of children who perished during the earthquake still actually haunt the premises today. The pitter-patter of little feet running around, along with the sounds of just skipping rope and giggling tots, are the most common reports coming from those living souls brave enough to actually explore this decaying orphanages. Now, a massive gloomy feeling seems to descend upon all who spend any time here. The Van Gelder Hotel, which is also in Seward, is also rumored to be haunted by a woman who was assassinated in room 202, with some claiming to see her ghost described as a very tall blonde woman in a blue dress. Now, this town is just riddled with paranormal activity. Remind me to add it to my bucket list. Deadwood, South Dakota. If you've ever, caught an episode of the HBO series Deadwood, you already know who Sheriff Seth Bullock is. If not, a visit to the Bullock Hotel in Deadwood, South Dakota will acquaint you with him very quickly, as his ghost still spends an awful lot of time there. Bullock and Solstar built the hotel in 1895. Being a sheriff, you might guess, that Seth met a grim kind of bullet-riddled demise, but he actually passed away of cancer in 1919. Bullock turned showers on and off, ensures that the living staff, isn't just kind of lollygagging about, and generally likes to make his presence known to all who venture inside his guest house. Several locations aside from the Bullock Hotel, including the Fairmont Hotel, Franklin Hotel, and Saloon number 10, are frequently cited as particularly haunted. Now, the town's history as a Wild West boomtown with a violent past, including the assassination of Wild Bill Hickok, contributes to its eerie reputation. Ghost tours are usually held at their bars, brothels, and gaming halls, so check it out if you're ever there and report back. Bannack, Montana is actually said to be haunted by Sheriff Henry Plummer. Now, Bannack, Montana is a classic gold rush ghost town. It was founded in 1862 and was home to 10,000 people at its height before it was actually abandoned. Now, it was also home to Henry Plummer, whose, biography basically seems tailor-made for ghost stories. Before arriving in Bannack, Plummer was a sheriff of Nevada County, California, where he was known for playing both sides of the law and where he was eventually joined, by kind of a group of bandits. Now, upon arriving in Bannack to prospect for gold, Plummer again convinced the townspeople to elect him sheriff. Details are sketchy about what happened next. Now, at the time, a group of road agents called the Innocents were terrorizing the town, and it's unclear whether Plummer himself was the founder, and leader of the group. Either way, a group of panicked miners eventually formed a posse and kind of unalived several innocent people, as well as the sheriff. However, it is also possible the Innocents fabricated Plummer's involvement in the group to lessen their culpability and unalived him themselves. Grave robbers later decapitated his body, according to local legend. If you ever kind of wander through Bannack, you might see the headless sheriff's ghost. Another terrifying story from the same town, though, is of a young girl named Dorothy Dunn. She tragically actually drowned in a dredge pond. Now, her demise is said to be linked to sightings of a young girl in a blue dress, often seen in the Mead Hotel. Beyond specific stories, there are reports just generally of cold spots, unexplained sounds, and other ghostly phenomena in various locations within Bannack. Definitely sounds like just one big haunted town, am I right? Batstow Village in New Jersey. This town is said to be the stomping grounds of the Jersey Devil. Well, that doesn't sound so good. Now, Batstow is yet another abandoned American settlement, only instead of being home to a ghost, it's home to a legendary cryptid. Now, it was founded in 1766 to support an ironworks that supplied the Continental Army and was inhabited for the next 110 years. Today, the remains of Batstow are part of the 1.1 million acre forest known as the Pine Barrens. That forest is also home to the legendary Jersey Devil, which means tons of unconfirmed, vaguely written reports of people seeing the creature at Batstow Village. Now, according to legend, the Jersey Devil is, the cursed 13th child of a New Jersey woman named Mrs. Leeds, who gave birth to it in 1735, making it almost 300 years old. It's described as a kangaroo-like creature with the face of a horse, the head of a dog, and bat-like wings, horns, and a tail, and feeds on livestock. Numerous accounts suggest that ghosts are frequently observed roaming the grounds, of Batstow Village. Today, Batstow Village is a popular tourist destination with over 40 sites and structures open for visitors, despite its reputation as a haunted location. Grafton, Utah. Grafton is known as a ghost town with a history of paranormal activity, and some believe its cemetery is indeed haunted. Visitors have reported strange noises, ghostly apparitions, and an overall feeling of just otherworldly presence, suggesting the spirits of the original settlers, may linger there. The town cemetery, with over 80 graves, is particularly rumored to be haunted, with reports of infants crying and a woman walking through a lonely graveyard. It's said to also be haunted by a sobbing woman who kind of wanders the cemetery at night. Now, not all ghost towns are former mining settlements. In 1859, 5 Mormon families settled along the Virgin River just outside of what's now Utah's Zion National Park. They called their settlement Wheeler, and when the Civil War began the following year, they focused on planting cotton. But in 1862, a flood wiped out most of Wheeler. Now, it was rebuilt and renamed Grafton, but floods periodically continued, as well as illnesses and raids by Indigenous Americans. Now, only 28 people lived in Grafton in 1864, according to the census. Most abandoned it by 1890, and by 1909, only 3 families actually remained, and by 1945, it was finally deserted for good. It's since been used as a backdrop for Western films like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Now, like many abandoned, frontier towns, Grafton also has had its very good share of ghost sightings. Ghost hunters have heard crying infants and seen a woman walking again through the town cemetery. Calico, California. Calico ghost town in California is well known for its paranormal activity and ghost stories. Forest, making it a very popular destination for those interested in the supernatural. Now, visitors and locals alike have reported experiencing very strange noises, unexplained chills in their body, and even seeing shadowy figures or spectral apparitions, within the town's buildings and streets. Now, this town is said to be haunted by school children and teachers. Prospectors found silver in the Calico Mountains in 1875, and by the early 1880s, the fledgling town of Calico was home to about 2,500 people. But when the Silver Purchase Act of 1890 lowered silver prices, the town became a ghost of its former self. Residents began moving away, and by 1935, it was deserted completely. Now, according to local legend, Calico is home to a variety of spirits, many of whom inhabit, the ruins of the former schoolhouse. Visitors claim to have seen both teachers and students haunting the building, as well as a mysterious red ball of light. Now, despite these occurrences, in 1950, Knott's Berry farm owner Walter Knott purchased the land on which Calico sat and restored the remains of the town. In 1966, Knott donated Calico to San Bernardino County. Now, the town's history, with its many colorful characters and dramatic events, may contribute to the stories of hauntings. The remote location is isolated, and the town may also, enhance the sense of mystery and paranormal activity.
Number 5. A Panzer. Something that's pretty recurring for strange artifacts people find on moving into an old house is memorabilia or relics from one of the many wars that has existed on this warlike people. Crates and trunks full of Civil War dollars, maybe an old uniform or old medals. It's either very boring or interesting stuff if you're a history buff. I actually have a relic or two from the Soviet army in my personal collection. Maybe I shouldn't say that on the internet. What do you think is the oddest relic you could find in a basement? Old battle plans, an old helmet maybe? Maybe an entire German tank from the Second World War? In 2015, authorities were called to the attention of an 84-year-old retiree living in Heikendorf because his neighbors were suspicious about the things they thought that they'd seen in his home, referring to paraphernalia from a certain group of troublesome nationalist socialists that YouTube doesn't like me talking about. Owning memorabilia from this infamous political party, we all know the one, can carry a criminal charge in some countries and is generally pretty frowned upon in most parts of the world, even if you're telling people you're just a big Wolfenstein fan. Well, if owning a hat with the logo on it is already close to illegal, imagine owning one of their weapons of war. There's actually significantly more laws restricting the ownership of World War II weaponry than you'd expect, surprisingly. There's no specific legalese for what to do if you happen to find a fully functional, nearly 80-year-old steel titan of rolling thunder and war in your neighbor's basement, though. Among the collection, is for lack of a better term, included torpedoes and multiple munitions and weapons. It took 9 hours of excavation. They literally had to call in the German army to excavate this guy's basement. They discovered a series of uniforms and other various World War II memorabilia from a certain political party that you probably wouldn't want to have in your basement. Hey, everybody's got hobbies. Some people collect Funko Pops of the Golden Girl, some people collect weapons of war. The man was taken in and arrested, and several museums and private collections in the United States offered to buy the items off of him to preserve for museums. A noble idea for sure, but good Lord, could you imagine the shipping costs on a Mark IV Panzer? 2-day free shipping from Amazon Prime, gonna cover that? And if you're looking for way more weird stories, things people have found, cryptids, aliens, conspiracies, true crimes, basically, if it freaks you out, we've done a video or two on it. So please, I invite you to click subscribe. Make sure to hit that little bell so you don't miss anything, but would you kindly do that at the end of this video? Because I got 4 more weird things found in the basement coming up for you right now. Number 4, sharks. They say you need to be a shark to make it in the cutthroat world of real estate. I think that's speaking metaphorically, but I've been wrong before. Perhaps sometimes people take that a bit too far. In 2019, a 38-year-old in New York was arrested after suspicions that he was doing something strange with sharks when locals in the neighborhood noticed that he had several undergrown sandbar sharks in the back of his truck. Now, 1 or 2 sandbar sharks. When asked, he pleaded guilt to reselling the sharks to private buyers. I would have folded immediately too. I have zero idea how you can explain yourself when the cops ask why you have a bunch of sandbar sharks in your back seat. Well, as if that wasn't nearly enough hot water, things only bubbled up more when the NYPD shipped up to his house and discovered those sharks in the back seat were just the starter sharks. Inside his home was an above-ground pool in the basement containing 7 live sharks and several not as alive sharks. Whether or not they were snacks for the other sharks or just sharks that didn't make the cut, not particularly clear. Now, this might surprise you, but it's actually illegal to sell sharks out of your basement. What actually surprised me, however, is that the trade of them is the illegal part. If you get yourself a fancy permit, you are legally allowed to keep sharks in your basement, but a license costs upward of 10 grand. But imagine being able to flash your shark license at parties. Unbelievable conversation starter and probably the best opening line on Tinder imaginable if you could mention your shark license. Now, if you're worried about these basement dwelling sharks, fret not. They all found homes at the Coney Island Aquarium where they live peacefully and happily, having escaped containment to end up in a slightly larger containment with nicer accommodations. It's kind of like moving up to a minimum security prison where they let you play badminton on break. Number 3, the secret roommate. Do you have roommates? The odds are decent if you're a young adult watching this video, you probably do. Millennials all live with 14 other people in a house where no one's doing the dishes and we're all stealing the Wi-Fi from Ben's parents. Roommates can be fun. Nice to have someone to split a pizza with and watch Eraserhead after partaking in some stuff. But sometimes a roommate can be a total nightmare. Doesn't clean up after the shower, late on rent, secretly squats in your basement like the Phantom of the Opera. In 2013, a group of Ohio State students discovered, I'm gonna say this, probably the worst thing you could find in your basement, an extra roommate that none of you knew was living there illegally. Initially, they thought it was a joke. A group of freshmen at Ohio State moved into a co-op house and started feeling uneasy. Things would go missing, lights would be left on, objects would be moved. At first, the friends thought that they had a poltergeist on their hands and joked that the house was haunted. Well, it was, of sorts. The friends were searching for the source of these off-putting noises and they eventually found their way towards a locked door in the basement. They called in their building manager, he came in and knocked the door down and they discovered a makeshift hovel with a little living arrangement, framed photographs, and everything. There was someone living in secret in their basement. Their guest was swiftly evicted and almost heartwarmingly, the students felt bad, quoted as saying, "I'm sure he's a nice guy. I feel bad he was evicted, he just wasn't supposed to be there." The scariest part of all of this is that the leasing company hadn't changed the locks in years, or asked for any keys back from any previous tenants, which was how their guest was able to get back in and sleep over for so long. Who knows how many other people could have had keys? It's a good thing it ended as benign as it did. Number 2, 1,200 skeletons. Some people have skeletons in their closet. Secrets better left unsaid and undiscovered. I'll never tell you what's in my closet. Some of us have significantly more skeletons in their closet than others, like famous founding father Benjamin Franklin, who had roughly 1,200 bones in his closet. Bizarrely. Philadelphia's second most beloved man after Frank Reynolds, Benjamin Franklin, lived in a modest home in London at 36 Craven Street. In 1776, Franklin would pack up and move out of Craven Street. There was like some new country that was getting made or something. I can't really remember the name. I don't feel like there's any records of it. I don't know if anyone knows about this. Comment if you know what that means. Well, some 200 years later in 1998, conservationists were repairing 36 Craven, looking to turn Franklin's old bachelor pad into a museum, but perhaps they should consider a haunted house attraction instead, because they discovered a meter-deep pit in a windowless room beneath the garden containing 1,200 bones. Forensic evidence suggested the bones were centuries old, lining up with when Franklin was alive. Was the founding father secretly doing Dexter Morgan stuff in his basement? He was a Freemason. Was he involved in terrifying rituals? And if Assassin's Creed 3 is to be believed as historically accurate, which I'm sure it is, he was involved with an ancient conspiracy of assassins. Now, before you raise your pitchforks at this fast-talking Canadian for besmirching one of the founding fathers, it's actually more understandable than you think. It's pretty freaky, but it's understandable. You see, back in the day, the study of anatomy was kind of frowned upon and looked down on as being grisly and unpleasant and not fit to rub elbows with proper society. So, surgeons and doctors had to turn to grave robbing to get cadavers. Franklin's spot was a safe spot for his friend and protege, the young William Hewson, an up-and-coming surgeon. The place was secure, clandestine, and owned by a trusted friend, so Hewson would dig up bodies and then bury his experiments in his good friend Ben Franklin's backyard. So, Benjamin Franklin just had some very strange friends, and he's not a deranged serial killer that we know of. Number 1, a whole city. And finally, I like to think I've saved the best for last here. We found some strange stuff in the basement so far. We got a tank, sharks, skeletons. But to top it off, we're gonna go with the strangest thing anyone ever found in their basement: an entire lost city. Basically the plot of Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe, but for real. Located in Cappadocia, Turkey, this extraordinary underground complex was discovered completely by accident in 1963 when a local man decided to renovate his basement. So if you've been sitting on your laurels waiting to get started on that home reno project, you might want to. You might have a secret kingdom beneath your basement. As the man began to dismantle a wall in his home, he stumbled upon a hidden passage that led to a vast underground chamber. Does this not sound completely made up, like it's the plot to a video game or something? But it happened. Further exploration revealed an expansive network of rooms, tunnels, and staircases extending as deep as 18 stories beneath the surface. This would turn out to be Derinkuyu, an underground city that had remained hidden for centuries. This guy basically found Atlantis in his backyard. Derinkuyu is estimated to have been built around the 8th century. That's a long time ago, and was used by these ancient inhabitants as a sanctuary and refuge during times of persecution. The city was designed to accommodate thousands of people, featuring living quarters, kitchens, stables, chapels, ventilation shafts, even a sophisticated water system. It's believed that Derinkuyu could have provided shelter for up to 20,000 people along with livestock, ensuring their survival during extended periods of isolation. They would have loved quarantine down there. This discovery shed light on the resourcefulness and advanced engineering skills of its creators. This precision, complexity, and architectural planning involved in such a vast underground settlement were amazing achievements for their time. And some guy just discovered it by accident because it was in his backyard. That's maybe my favorite fact I have ever learned on this channel. Now, the whole real reason behind it is still a topic of speculation. Some people suggest it was primarily for defensive purposes, with its hidden location providing protection against possible invaders, while as others have proposed that it might have served as a center for religious or ceremonial activities because of how many chapels and religious iconography are on its walls. Or maybe it was just like a secret city and they were doing like a Bioshock thing and all the best and brightest were hiding out there from away from society. Anything's equally likely. When you go home tonight, or if you're at home already, I would start knocking on some of the walls or knocking on the floor just in case you have a secret kingdom hiding away.
In 5th place, we have the case of Anneliese Michel. She grew up practicing Christianity in Bavaria, West Germany in the 1960s, where she attended Mass twice a week. When Anneliese was only 16, she suddenly blacked out at school and began walking around in what her friends and family described as a trance-like state, and she herself was unable to recall any of it. A year later, Anneliese experienced a similar occurrence where she woke up in a trance after her body went through a series of convulsions, causing it to shake uncontrollably. After this, Anneliese visited a neurologist who diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, a disorder that causes seizures, loss of memory, and experiencing visual and auditory hallucinations. After her diagnoses, Anneliese began taking medication for her epilepsy and enrolled in the University of Würzburg in 1973. Now, if that medication was successful, I wouldn't be talking about her right now, would I? The medication she was given failed to help her, and as the year progressed, her condition deteriorated. She began to see the face of the devil wherever she went, and constantly heard demons whispering in her ears. When she heard the demons telling her she was damned and would rot in hell while she was praying, she concluded that the devil himself must be possessing her. Anneliese sought out priests to help her with her demonic possession, but all the clergy she approached rejected her requests, saying that she should seek medical help and that they would need the permission of a bishop to do anything. Now at this point, Anneliese's state had become extreme. With the knowledge that she was possessed consuming her, she constantly ripped the clothes off her body, compulsively performed up to 400 squats a day, crawled under a table, and barked like a dog for 2 days. Hey, who needs a gym, right? She also ate spiders and coal, bit the head off a dead bird, and licked her own fluids from the floor. Oh, I'm not queasy, why do you ask? Finally, she and her mother found a priest, Ernst Alt, who believed in her possession, stating that she didn't look like an epileptic. If I'm taking this with a grain of salt, I'd like to know what his definition of an epileptic looks like. Anneliese wrote to Ernst, "I am nothing, everything about me is vanity. What should I do? I have to improve. You pray for me. I want to suffer for other people, but this is so cruel. Ernst petitioned the local bishop, Bishop Joseph Stang, who eventually approved the request and granted local priest Arnold Renz the permission to perform an exorcism, but ordered that it be carried out in total secrecy. Now, being granted an exorcism in the 70s was like winning the lottery. They were very rarely granted due to the sensationalism caused by the release of The Exorcist, and the Catholic Church was determined to protect their reputation. Reputation at the time. Fine, reputation on exorcisms at the time. I know, it's the church. Over the next 10 months, following the bishop's approval of Anneliese's exorcism, Ernst and Arnold conducted 67 exorcisms, lasting up to 4 hours per session on the poor woman. Absolutely heinous. Through these sessions, Anneliese revealed that she was possessed by 6 demons, Lucifer, Cain, and Nero, amongst others. And that just there was how I learned that Nero was more than just a former Jeff Hardy gimmick. Weird middle name to give a kid. All these spirits would jostle for control of Anneliese's body and would communicate from her mouth with a low growl. The demons constantly argued with each other, with one being quoted as saying, "People are stupid as pigs. They think it's all over after death. It goes on." And another replying that the first was nothing but a big mouth who had no real say in hell. Throughout these sessions, Anneliese would frequently talk about dying to make up for the wayward youth of the day and apostate priests of the modern church. She broke the bones and ripped the tendons in her knees from continually kneeling in prayer, and I just felt that statement in my own ballet-worn knees. Ouch. Over these 10 months, Anneliese was frequently restrained so the priest could conduct exorcism rites. She slowly stopped eating and eventually passed from malnutrition and dehydration on July 1st, 1976 at only 23 years old. In 4th place, we have the nuns of Loudun and Louviers. Louviers? My French is 50-50 right now. Time to hop in my little time machine and head back to 1642 when 18 nuns became possessed. Father Mathurin Picard, the nunnery director, and Father Thomas Boule, the vicar at Louviers, were convicted on the evidence of the possessed nuns' recounts. The youngest of the group, being only 18 years old at the time, Sister Madeleine Bavin, was the initial possession victim. Her testimony was successful in throwing the church into a state of panic, alleging that Fathers Picard and Boule had taken the nuns to secret sabbats. At these gatherings, they became familiar with numerous demons, specifically including the demon Damon. Try saying that without tripping over your tongue. Nah. Testimonies quickly followed from the other nuns, reinforcing Madeleine's claims, and after further investigation from the church and its authorities, it was discovered that the nuns were suffering from the classic symptoms of possession. The exorcism rites that followed were made public, enabling the entire town of Louviers to become totally engrossed in the church and its proceedings. After the exorcisms, Madeleine was imprisoned for life, Father Boule was burned at the stake, and the corpse of Father Picard, who had already passed, was exhumed and burned. Moving into the 17th century, in the French village of Loudun, an entire convent of Ursuline nuns were possessed by a series of demons with names such as Leviathan, Astaroth, and Zabulon. These nuns appeared during a series of trials that accused the parish priest, Urbain Grandier, of having made a pact with Satan. Photos of the signed pact still exist, with autographs from the devil and the previous mentioned demons possessing the nuns. In a series of public trials and exorcisms, these nuns barked, screamed, convulsed, and spoke in devil language. These sights led to a public hysteria that ultimately ended in Urbain being burnt at the stake. The events of the Loudun possessions were turned into a book by Aldous Huxley called The Devils of Loudun in 1952, which was then adapted as the 1971 film The Devils. Anyone want to have a movie night? In 3rd place, we have John Jenkin, who also happens to be the most recent case on this list. In the summer of 2013, 25-year-old John from Cumbria, England, expressed fears that he would kill his mother. If it was just a fear, you can't relate some days. Well, in his deranged state, he approached a random van driver, put his hands in the air in a surrender motion, and cried out, "I am armed, but it's not in my hands." Desperate to avoid committing such an atrocity, John tried to end his life by downing a cocktail of whiskey, painkillers, LSD, and attempting to end himself in a river. He was discovered later that day, unstable, and smeared with his own red fluid after self-inflicting. After these events, John was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, where staff judged him as low risk and released him. I'm no expert, but I'd hate to see high risk if that's considered, minimal? Later that evening, he confessed to a group of friends that he was possessed by demons, stating, "I am the devil, I need to confess." He said his mother had become aggressive and controlling after the events of that day. And that same night, his sister Katie had confided in one of her own friends that she was really worried about her brother, saying that he didn't seem like her brother and he didn't look like her brother anymore. The next morning, after a brutal argument with his mother and sister, he went downstairs and hit his mother with lots of blows to her head with a sharp end of an axe, and when his sister came downstairs, he attacked her as well to stop her from screaming. I guess the sister was sadly right to be worried. Now, after the killings, John was found stark naked, crouched behind a bench, acting erratically. When a police officer asked him if he had taken anything, he simply replied, "Lives." A court has since sentenced him to a minimum of only 12 years in prison. In second place, time to meet Michael Taylor. In the 1970s, Michael Taylor was largely an ordinary figure in the town of Ossett, Yorkshire. He, his wife Christine, their 5 children, and their pet poodle lived peaceful and happy lives. And now to, pop that Stepford Wives bubble. In 1974, Christine stated to a Christian fellowship group to which they both belonged that his relationship with the leader of the group, Marie Robinson, was carnal in nature. Michael admitted that he felt evil within him and eventually attacked Marie verbally, who screamed back at him. Marie stated that his eyes changed to something bestial and that he began to speak in tongues. Michael had no memory of the event, something all too common in cases of possession. During the next meeting, he received an absolution, but his behavior continued to become more erratic. As a result, the local vicar called in other ministers experienced in deliverance in preparation to cast out the demons residing within the man. The exorcism, which occurred between the 5th and the 6th of October 1974 at St. Thomas's Church in Gobber, was led by Father Peter Vincent, the Anglican priest of St. Thomas's, and was aided by a Methodist clergyman, the Reverend Raymond Smith. Over the next 8 hours, Michael would repeatedly have crucifixes stuffed inside of his mouth while being doused with holy water. Okay, now my jaw hurts. According to Bill Ellis, an authority on folklore and the occult in contemporary culture, the exorcists believed that they had, in this all-night ceremony, invoked and cast out at least 40 demons, including those of incest, bestiality, blasphemy, and lewdness. In the end, exhausted, they allowed Taylor to go home, although they felt that at least 3 demons were still left in him. While at home, he brutally ended his wife, Christine, by attacking her with his bare hands, tearing her eyes and tongue out, and almost tearing her face off. He was eventually found by a policeman, completely naked in the street and covered in red fluid. At his trial in March, he was acquitted on the grounds of insanity. He was sent to Broadmoor Hospital for 2 years, then spent another 2 years in a secure ward in Bradford before being released. I'm seeing some repeating factors here, are you? Finally, in first place, we have Arne Cheyenne Johnson, otherwise known as the Devil Made Me Do It. Now, before I talk about his exact crime, we have to explain how he came to be possessed. Satan originally possessed David Glatzel, the 11-year-old brother of his fiancée, who was living with the couple. Strange happenings first began in the summer, when young David would jolt awake in the middle of the night, sobbing in fear after being visited by a hideous creature that he described as a man with big black eyes, a thin face with animal features, jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns, and hooves. The beastly apparition had issued a warning. Beware. Very quickly, the visions amplified, with David's beast now haunting him during the daytime. Each time the child experienced a visitation, deep scratches would appear on the front door of the family's home, and red marks would appear on David's body. Thankfully, everyone in the household believed his claims. According to his sister Debbie, it was out of character for him to lie, describing that he never liked anything spooky, not even scary comic books. Becoming increasingly worried for young David, a priest was summoned to bless the house, but that accomplished a big fat nada. The possession had escalated to such heights that the family were now taking shifts to monitor him during the night. Eventually, the involvement of paranormal investigators, some of my favorite people to discuss on this channel, Ed and Lorraine Warren, was begged for, and luckily for the family, they were available. With her strong powers of clairvoyance, Lorraine described encountering a black misty form during her first meeting with David, knowing immediately she and Ed were dealing with something of a negative nature. Lorraine has stated over the course of several visits, David made numerous references to ending in stabbings. In an attempt to save David from his endless tormentors, Arne taunted the demons during exorcisms to enter his body and leave the boy alone. And sadly, the challenge was accepted. Look, I'm all for saving kiddos, but there's a limit. You don't want to actually invite the demons into your body. Over many months after that fateful day, Arne's fiancée reported that he would go into a trance, where he would growl and say he saw the beast, and later would have no memory of it. It was 6 months later, on the 16th of February, 1981, shortly after 6 p.m., that Arne brutally attacked his landlord, stabbing him in a frenzy as he growled like a beast, while Debbie watched, unable to react. The landlord passed away later that evening. At his trial, Arne pleaded not guilty to the ending charge, with his defense being the demonic entity which inhibited his body had caused him to do it. Alright, I think I'm going to kick off today with a case from Detroit, Michigan. The mystery of the disappearance of Phyllis Ann Flynn is one that lingers, casting a shadow over the years that have passed since that fateful night in May of 1988, which was before I was born. It's a puzzle that has defied resolution, leaving family and investigators grasping at straws in their quest for answers. After a birthday celebration at the Hotel Yorba in Detroit, Flynn vanished without a trace. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance are as mysterious as the hotel itself. She had requested that her father pick her up, a plea that would echo throughout the years as a haunting reminder of the unanswered questions. Now, the timeline of events is hauntingly sparse. A few days after her birthday, Flynn called home, signaling her desire to be retrieved from the Hotel Yorba. However, when her father arrived, she had evaporated into thin air, leaving behind an eerie void, and nobody has heard from her since. In the years that followed, the case went cold, a perplexing enigma with no breakthroughs. The detective assigned to Flynn's case retired, and the shadows seemed to close in on the scant leads. But even as the official investigation drew to a close, a glimmer of hope persisted among those determined to unravel the mystery. A family friend and a diligent Michigan State Police detective breathed some new life into the cold case back in 2014, so about a decade ago, reigniting the flame of inquiry. The Community United Effort Center for Missing Persons brought national attention to Flynn's disappearance, thrusting it into the spotlight of awareness-building efforts. The passage of time has not dimmed the resolve of those seeking closure. The Missing in Michigan campaign, led by Detective Sarah Krebs, has tirelessly worked to unearth fresh clues. The story of Phyllis Flynn found its place on billboards, a visual plea for information that could hopefully pierce through the fog of uncertainty. But to this day, the question remains: what happened at the Hotel Yorba? The void left by Flynn's disappearance resonates, a silent call for answers. The reward offered by Crime Stoppers of Michigan stands as an incentive, a monetary beacon beckoning anybody with information to step forward. But with the passage of 36 years, the harsh reality is lingering. Flynn's family, against the odds, clings to hope that she might still be alive. But sadly, the Hotel Yorba, once a backdrop to a birthday celebration, now stands as a silent witness to a disappearance that continues to baffle those who seek resolution. So I don't exactly have a name for this next hotel, outside of knowing that it's somewhere in the UK. I know, vague, but it was worth telling today. Imagine a place shrouded in whispers and veiled in the unknown. A hotel that, over the years, has become an unsettling enigma, a backdrop to a haunting mystery that eludes comprehension. It's not your typical story. It's a tale woven with threads of uncertainty and shadowed by the inexplicable disappearances of 66 young people. Nestled in the heart of the countryside, this hotel, with its weathered facade, stands as a testament to a history stained by the unexplained. The corridors echo with the distant laugh of young people who once roamed freely, their footsteps now silenced by a force that transcends the boundaries of our understanding. The first whispers of the mystery dates way back, like decades, a quiet murmur amongst locals who traded stories of curious occurrences. As time unfolded, so did the tales of the vanished youths, leaving a chilling imprint on the history of this seemingly ordinary establishment. Each disappearance, if we're going to compare it to something, maybe a jigsaw piece missing from a larger puzzle, paints a spectral image of uncertainty. The missing people, diverse in their backgrounds, ages, and stories, all converge at this point, their common thread being a vanishing act that perplexes even the most seasoned investigators. The authorities, puzzled and haunted by the lack of clues, have combed through the hotel's history, interviewed witnesses, scrutinized every nook and cranny, but they've got nothing. The answers remain elusive, like ghosts slipping through the fingers of those who seek them. The hotel itself, with its creaking floorboards and flickering lights, becomes a stage where the mundane collides with the mysterious. An invisible hand seems to orchestrate a malevolent symphony, leaving behind a disconcerting silence in the wake of each disappearance. The local community, once welcoming, now gazes upon the hotel with a mix of fear and curiosity. Whispers in the wind suggest that the place holds secrets, that it harbors an otherworldly energy, indifferent to the laws of our reality. As the count of those who have vanished climbed, the hotel's reputation transformed. It became more than bricks and mortar. It was just this living, breathing entity with a story. The rooms, once filled with the innocent laughter of youth, now resonate with an eerie stillness, a reminder of those who stepped into the shadows and never returned. Yeah, that's not somewhere I want to visit. No thank you, I'll leave the mysteries there. I don't need to unravel them. Now next up we have a legend that I believe to be true. Many years ago, an English woman and her daughter, at the conclusion of a tour in the Near East, arrived at a Paris hotel at the time of the exhibition. They were given separate rooms, one above the other. Trust me, I wouldn't want to be in the same room as my mother. After resting for a few hours, the daughter went to go see her mother, but the room was empty and completely altered. Like new wallpaper, new furniture, new everything. She was panicking. She called the maid and then the manager was like, you're under a delusion. When you arrived at this hotel, you were quite alone. But the girl was like, no, we signed our names in the visitor's book, mother and I. So they brought out the visitor's book, and above the daughter's name, what the mother had signed, was a signature of a stranger. Now, it wasn't until about a year later that the daughter learned that her mother had died suddenly of the plague, and that in order to save Paris from, crazy panic and the exhibition from absolute ruin, it was hurriedly agreed by the authorities that the death should be completely hushed up, and that the daughter should be made to believe, by the repeated denials of hotel servants, hotel managers, and cabmen, and the proofs of, the changed room and the altered visitor's book, that her unfortunate mother never reached the hotel. Imagine, you go to take a nap and you wake up and all of a sudden, okay, mom's gone, and you're Delulu. The girl allegedly found out the truth in a letter from a chambermaid. So when the story was originally told at a dinner at the house of Arthur Balfour, at the time, British Prime Minister, they were all hanging out, and Balfour was like, yeah, I'm gonna guess the ending. Now, a journalist for the Pall Mall Gazette, I think this was around 1913, talked to the author who originally published the tale, a Mr. Clement K. Shorter, noting by this time, of course, we've all heard the story. What's the truth to it? And Mr. Shorter's like, no, I believe it happened. It is a heck of a lot easier to believe that it happened than it was invented. And given an illness under precisely the same circumstances, the French police authorities are like the only police authorities in the world who are equal to coping with it so brilliantly. I can't imagine waking up and being told, hey, you're completely wrong. No, thank you. Now for a tale that cursed me to my core, Liz, Sarah, and the Cosmos Resort. 2 years ago, a seemingly ordinary vacation turned into a nightmarish odyssey for a pair of friends, Liz and Sarah. The backdrop? A hotel that, despite its outward appearance of renovation and cheerfulness, concealed a darkness that would shake the very core of their existence. So the girls went in the lobby, they're like, okay, we're gonna go sign in. But there was this feeling of unease that was just sort of everywhere in the air. The check-in process was marked by odd glances and a peculiar conversation with the hotel staff. But they got upgraded. Woohoo! Room 347. This room with a view that won Sarah over. Seemed like, okay, things are getting better. Maybe my gut's just off. Maybe I need a nap. The first night was uneventful for Sarah, but for Liz, the shadows whispered secrets that kept her awake. Strange scratching noises emanated from behind the walls, which, yikes, that's not a soundtrack I want when I'm trying to sleep. And it only got worse as the days went on. A hidden door, concealed behind a nightstand, revealed a narrow, ominous space that reeked of rust and bleach. Yeah, that's terrifying. As Sarah delved deeper into the mystery, she discovered a network of tunnels, a dark labyrinth that extended beneath the hotel. The eerie passageways, laden with the stench of decay, hinted at a sinister purpose, one that became much more apparent as time went on. Liz's disappearance on the final night of their stay plunged Sarah into a desperate search for answers. The hotel staff's nonchalant response and the dismissive attitude of the police created an air of conspiracy. Sure, because the hidden door that led to under the hotel with the stench of decay wasn't enough. Determined to unravel the enigma, Sarah returned to the haunted hotel, guided by an invitation that seemed to taunt her, if you will. The nights after became a harrowing exploration of the hotel's hidden layers. The H sections, neglected and avoided, hinted at a malevolence that defied, my brain. The discovery of a bricked-up elevator shaft and the disturbing encounters in the narrow tunnels hinted at a malevolent force that lurked within the hotel's very foundation. So, fast forward, it's the final night, and in a desperate attempt to retrace Liz's steps, Sarah was led to an encounter with entities that, weren't of this world. Liz, or a distorted version of her, beckoned from the shadows. The nightmarish entities, with eyes that pierced the darkness, pursued Sarah through the dilapidated corridors, transforming the once grand ballroom into a grotesque spectacle. Now this whole mess reached its climax on the mysterious 7th floor. The revelation that Liz's encounter in the tunnel had birthed something malevolent. Something that wore her face, but harbored unspeakable horrors. Yeah, it painted a bit of a grim picture. The hotel's twisted reality, where time and space lost coherence, left poor Sarah grappling with a profound sense of dread. Now, this sad story concludes with Sarah's escape, but the psychological scars, they run deep. The fear of encountering those otherworldly entities, of witnessing the distorted face of Liz, that's gonna linger like a memory you don't want to have. The hotel, now a malevolent entity in its own right, kind of stands as a thin veil that separates our world from the other world, and not one you want to go near. Time to travel over to the heart of Santa Fe, and no, that isn't a cue for Newsies or Rent fans, so hush. Nestled within the walls of the La Posada Hotel lies a tale that, it's gonna give you some nightmares, folks. It's a narrative steeped in mystery, spectral apparitions, and unexplained phenomena. Cool, we got the whole trifecta. Room 256, once the abode of Julia Staub, echoes with the whispers of a bygone era, where the living and the dead seem to converge in a dance of the paranormal. Is it a ballet? So Chuck Barone, a vigilant security guard, recounted an eerie encounter that unfolded in this specific room of the hotel. In the company of a bellhop and a group of tourists, they approached said room, room 256, responding to a mysterious voice emanating from within. "I'm in here," it beckoned, yet upon investigation, the room was empty, with its windows locked from the inside, so there was no getting out of there. There was a phantom presence. Unseen, but you felt it. The paranormal enigma extended way beyond Chuck's story, by the way. His son John, a fellow guardian of the hotel secrets, if you will, witnessed a ghostly face in the men's room mirror. It was a woman's face staring back at him, sending a shiver right down his spine, and this inexplicable encounter left him pale and shaken, which, yeah, that tracks. Ross Weisenhoff, once a skeptic, found himself entangled in the spectral tapestry of the hotel as well. Awakening in the middle of the night, he noticed a luminescent figure at the foot of his bed. This entity morphed into the ethereal form of a woman, fixating on him with an otherworldly gaze. Now, this encounter shattered his skepticism, prompting a swift, "I'm getting out of here," as you do. The genesis of these ghostly manifestations lies in the tragic history of Julia, the lady of the mansion turned spectral hostess. She was once the vibrant center of Santa Fe's social tapestry, but fell into self-imposed exile after the loss of her 8th spawn. The Grand Mansion, a testament to love and opulence, transformed into the La Posada Hotel in 1936. Enter Christopher Chacon, a seeker of truth from the Organization of Scientific Investigation and Research. Alongside a team of experts, he delved into the paranormal intricacies of the hotel. Physical, psychological, and electrical examinations were conducted, leaving no stone unturned. 12 hours in isolation within the bedroom that's, doing all the bad things, monitoring the environment for any spectral stirrings. Infrared technology and night vision equipment were brought in, but despite the diligence, the source of the haunting remained elusive. Which, okay, we'll let you be. Ghosty ladies can do what you want. I would like to live. Alrighty folks, I'm gonna kick this off with less of a mystery and more of a crime from the 90s in the name of the occult that hurt my brain. Yeah, it's probably more recent than expected, but bear with me here. Welcome to the dark and twisted world of the Beasts of Satan. A name that echoes not just a criminal group, but a haunting chapter in the tales of occult mysteries from history. See, I like a good rhyme. The sinister saga unfolds like a macabre symphony, blending elements of satanic rituals, heavy metal music, and gruesome killings in a chilling crescendo that gripped Italy from 1998 until 2004. It all began with the red-soaked canvas of a double homicide in the woods near Somolombardo, a locale that would later be stained with more tales of horror. Chiara Marino and Fabio Tolis, a young couple immersed in the metal subculture, were sacrificed in a substance-fueled occult rite, marking the inception of a series of satanic ritual killings. The perpetrators, including names like Andrea Volpe, Nicola Sapone, and Mario Macchione, were not merely acquaintances, they were friends who turned into agents of the malevolence. The initial investigation stumbled, attributing the disappearance of the couple to a love affair gone awry. However, Fabio Tolis' father, Michel Tolis, embarked on a personal quest to unravel the truth. His persistence revealed a nexus between Satanism, the occult, and the black and death metal genres that his son and friends were drawn to. The story takes a darker turn with the third killing in 2004, involving Mariangela Pizzotta, a former girlfriend of Andrea Volpe. The details are gruesome, and she was fired at, mutilated, and buried alive in a greenhouse. The crimes were not just about death, but a perverse dance with it, marked by addiction and substance-fueled madness. As the investigation progressed, the abyss widened, revealing potential connections to other unsolved cases. The alleged involvement of the Beasts of Satan in up to 14 other mysterious deaths, including self-inflicted ones, disappearances, and violent incidents, cast a shadow of terror over the entire situation. The trials that followed saw convictions, but the reactions were kinda mixed. The sentence seemed inadequate to some, while others found solace in the semblance of justice. Life imprisonment awaited the leader, Nicola Sapone, while others faced long terms behind bars. The aftermath of this dark chapter extended beyond prison walls. Concerns about Satanism's allure amongst Italian youth grew, prompting calls for bans on death metal music. The revelations led to the establishment of a specialized police unit focused on investigating new religious sects and ritualistic groups, signaling a societal response to the fear that gripped the nation. Okay, so this next situation is less so a mystery, but another historical occult crime that I can't go without mentioning today. If Aleister Crowley isn't the first person that pops into your brain when you think about occult wrongdoings in history, I'd like to know who is. Born in 1875, Aleister Crowley was one of the most notorious occultists in the modern era. He had a rebellious youth when he joined the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, where he was trained in ceremonial magic by Samuel Liddell McGregor Mathers and Alan Bennett. He went mountaineering in Mexico with Oscar Eckenstein before studying Hindu and Buddhist practices in India. In 1904, he married Rose Edith Kelly and they honeymooned in Cairo, Egypt, where Crowley claimed to have been contacted by a supernatural entity named Aiwas, who provided him with the Book of the Law, a sacred text that served as the basis for Thelema, a traveler who loved the mountains. Alistair sought the most extreme and obscure forms of magic. In 1900, he attempted the Abramelin ritual, which required 6 months to complete and allegedly gave him control over the 12 lords of hell. However, he abandoned the ritual before completing it, which I don't blame him. 6 months is a long time. So he then founded his own religion, Thelema, identifying himself as the prophet entrusted with guiding humanity. After the unsuccessful 1905 Kachunjunga expedition and a visit to India and China, Alistair returned to Britain, where he attracted attention as a prolific author of poetry, novels, and occult literature. In 1907, he and George Cecil Jones co-founded an esoteric order, through which they propagated Thelema. After spending time in Algeria, in 1912, Alistair was initiated into another esoteric order, the German-based Ordo Templi Orientis, or OTO for short, rising to become the leader of its British branch, which he reformulated in accordance with his personal beliefs. Through the OTO, Thelemite groups were established in Britain, Australia, and North America. Alistair spent the First World War in the United States, where he took up painting and campaigned for the German war effort against Britain, later revealing that he had infiltrated the pro-German movement to assist the British intelligence services. In 1920, he established the Abbey of Thelema, a religious commune in Cefalù, Sicily, where he lived with various followers. His libertine lifestyle led to denunciations in the British press, and the Italian government evicted him in 1923. He divided the following 2 decades between France, Germany, and England, and continued to promote his religion until his death. The Book of Necronomicon, dedicated to Alistair, mentions that necromantic magic has caused changes in the consciousness for, those who were most intimately involved with it. Therefore, it undertakes the principle of facing all the fears and darkness that resides within to reach the light and spirit within the soul. Alistair believed sincerely in the existence of magic, to the point where he performed Enochian magic to make himself invisible. He's even stated that apparently once upon a time a vampire attacked him, which, excuse me? I would like to know more about that. Alrighty, now to get into some fun mysteries. How about we start off with a werewolf? So the Werewolf of Bedberg, a tale that weaves through the fabric of the 17th century, is a chilling narrative that transcends the boundaries of mere folklore. At its core is Peter Stubby, a seemingly upstanding member of society, a wealthy farmer, a widower, and a father to 2 offspring. Yet beneath this facade lies a creature of the night, a werewolf with an insatiable appetite for human redness and a penchant for unspeakable horrors. Peter's alleged crimes are not for the faint of heart. The laundry list of atrocities include taking schmexual advantage of people, hurting folks in the same vein, the gruesome act of ripping spawn from pregnant women, and the rope necklacing of small humans, and also the raw consumption of innocent lambs and calves. I apologize if any of that verbiage confused you. The interwebs don't like me talking about icky criminal acts, but if we're going to ignore history, then we're doomed to repeat it. So I'm doing the best I can here. If you have questions, I'm sure somebody in the comments can help you out. The depths of his depravity reached their peak with the horrific mass killing of his own family, a monstrous act that involved impregnating his daughter, killing his son, and then devouring the young one's brains. Sheesh. The community that once held him in high regard as a two-faced, empathetic widower now recoiled in horror as the true nature of Peter was unveiled. The Werewolf of Bedberg was not just a mythical creature in the shadows, it was a very real menace that had infiltrated the fabric of daily life. The climax of this tale, as with many stories of its kind, is the capture and execution of the monstrous perpetrator. Peter met his end, and the echoes of his gruesome deeds reverberated through, history books. This harrowing narrative has persisted over centuries, retold and adapted, capturing the collective imagination of, everybody. This werewolf stands not only as a tale of horror, but as a reminder that things are kind of scary out there, we don't know everything, and that's my nightmare fuel right there. Ready to hang out in the 1600s for a minute? Me too! Let's go back in time together. The Tremor of Tedworth, a tale hailing from the depths of the 1600s, unfolds like a spectral melody resonating through the corridors of Wiltshire's haunted history. Picture this: a mysterious drummer, unseen but omnipresent, wandering through the streets of Tedworth, drumming not just a rhythmic beat, but an unsettling demand for money. Sounds like every freak show I've been at ever. In the midst of this spectral drumming, a man named John Mompesson, perturbed by the relentless rhythms, decides to take matters into his own hand. He has the drummer apprehended, his drum confiscated until he confesses to the alleged fraud of his actions. The paranormal percussionist, once detained, vanishes from the scene upon his release, leaving behind an eerie quiet that precedes an even stranger turn of events. As Mompesson embarks on a journey to London, a trip meant to provide respite, his family becomes the unwilling audience to a haunting encore. The air is pierced by the unmistakable sounds of drumming, loud and relentless, echoing through the walls of their home. The drummer, once a tangible figure, transforms into an ethereal presence, playing his spectral beats in the dead of night. First recorded in a pamphlet in 1678, the story of the Drummer of Tedworth has endured the test of time, weaving its way into the fabric of occult discussions. Whether regarded as a piece of historical mystery or dismissed as a mere legend, The tale of the haunted drum and its ghostly percussionist persists, a mysterious echo from a bygone era that refuses to be silenced. See, I promised y'all actual mysteries today. Alrighty, we're gonna end this entire list with a tale from biblical times. So how was that for a history lesson? The Witch of Endor, a mysterious figure embedded in the ancient tapestry of the Hebrew Bible, emerges in the book of 1 Samuel 28, a chapter that plunges us into the realm of the supernatural. So, picture this. King Saul, facing imminent battle and devoid of his trusted seer Samuel, turns to this mystical practitioner for guidance, a desperate grasp at the threads connecting the living and the dead. Saul's quest for insight, his yearning for a conduit to the spirit world, leads him to the Witch of Endor. It's a moment steeped in desperation, a king seeking answers beyond the veil of the tangible. The encounter unfolds, and the revelation is chilling. A proclamation of Saul's impending defeat, a destiny sealed in the threads of the spiritual fabric. This occult liaison catapults the Witch of Endor into the realms of necromancy and spiritualism. In the intricate mosaic of various occult practices and modern paganism, she becomes a symbol, a psychic medium representing the land surrounding Israel. The questions that arise from her tale delve into the moral quandaries of her actions, probing the delicate threads that bind the living to the ethereal. The Witch of Endor's story, a kaleidoscope of interpretation, weaves its way through the chapters of history, each retelling adding nuances to the intricate dance between the realms. It's more than a narrative. It's a philosophical exploration of the intersection between the living and the dead, a contemplation of the morality embedded in the pursuit of supernatural knowledge. As we unravel the layers of her tale, we confront the enduring power of occult witchcraft and the intricacies of the spiritual realm. The Witch of Endor, a spectral figure from the ancient past, beckons us to contemplate the unseen forces that shape our world, leaving us with more questions than answers. A perpetual mystery echoing through the corridors of time.
Coming in at number 5, bug-eyed. We love a good pun from time to time, but this one might just stick with me for the rest of my life. As a person who's worked at swimming pools and summer camps, I've seen all sorts of different stuff get into people's eyes, from sticks, rocks, chlorinated water, bird droppings, and of course, bugs. Hell, I had a gnat fly into my eye while I was biking just last week. But these are all things that can be removed relatively easily if you're careful. They're not trying to make a home in your ocular orb. This story from Reddit user Oscar Devine makes me want to scream, and you're about to find out why. It goes like this. I've told this story before. I'm an eye doctor and I had a patient come to me with an infected eyelid 2 other eye doctors tried to treat and failed. They were dumping all sorts of medicine into it and it wasn't getting any better. At this point it was swollen and painful for weeks with no improvement despite being on tons of meds. Apparently neither of them thought to flip the lid upside down, you know, the gross trick that some kids do with their upper eyelids. It was a painful maneuver for her very swollen eyelid, which might explain it. Anyhow, there appeared to be what looked like a visible abscess inside the tissue with thick, gooey material. I thought I'd give it a nudge and I saw it move. This wasn't an abscess, it was something else. I managed to remove it quite easily in one whole piece. It was a fly larva. The patient told me that she had a bug hit her in the eye a few days before she got this infection. I removed the larva and within 2 days the wound closed and she was 100% recovered on basic antibiotic eye drops. Yes, I do have the photos for this case for those interested. I mean, I for one am not interested. Walking around with a larva in your eyelid for weeks and not bothering to figure out what it actually was? What if it was like wriggling around in there? What if it decided to start crawling around and looking for food? This is the kind of body horror I would expect in a movie, not real life. Although, what is real life if not horror? Let's keep moving. Coming in at number 4, we've got some unwelcome tenants. This is a personal fear of mine played out right before someone's very eyes. The idea of a silent, sneaky, and altogether uninvited individual deciding that the nooks and crannies of my home are free real estate just drives me nuts. And the worst bit is you're living in blissful ignorance of this until something finally sticks out and other patterns reveal themselves. Those bumps in the night? That wasn't the house settling or whatever other explanation your grandmother might have given you. That was a squatter moving around in the dark. All that food seemingly going missing. It sure wasn't partially forgotten midnight snacks or your friends being greedy, if you know what I'm saying. Those times the motion sensing lights went off in the middle of the night. Not mice, raccoons, or squirrels. Boy, oh boy. User IEAMS85 told their tale in a thread about this particular occurrence. For about a year I lived in a house with 4 housemates. We had a pretty big backyard with a garage and a tool shed that we never used, ever. We also had motion detector lights. 2 of my housemates were very superstitious and believed in ghosts and spirits and such. They also liked to get high on different substances. The lights in our backyard would go off randomly. I assumed it was animals, my housemates were sure it was a ghost. One of them told us she'd seen a man ghost looking through our window when she was high on shrooms. They thought it was scary. I thought nothing of it because, well, yeah. A few nights later, drunk me thought I saw a man through the mesh door to the backyard. I just thought my mind was playing tricks on me because my housemates kept talking about the ghost. Eventually I moved out to go back to my home country, and about 6 months after that I FaceTimed with one of the housemates. Turns out we hadn't seen a ghost. A homeless man had been living in our tool shed for God knows how long. Gave me the creeps for sure. All this happening pre-pandemic is horrific, right? But imagine it happening now. You're always home, and they have smaller windows to get out of their hiding spot. What if somebody died while in your home because they couldn't get enough food or couldn't get outside and you didn't even know until you smelled something funny? That's not an experience I ever want to have. Coming in at number 3, we've got pus brain. Not two words you really want to see together, right? Well, just listen to this story from user Slappy McSlappenstein. It speaks for itself. When I worked in healthcare, I had a patient who got a sinus infection. He stopped taking his antibiotics after a few days because he felt better. His sinus infection came back with a vengeance. When he got to the emergency department, he was presenting with stroke symptoms. The infection had spread to his cranial cavity. There was so much pus that it was twisting his brain. No one thought he would survive the surgery. The family was advised to expect the worst, but amazingly he actually survived. He ended up needing 3 more surgeries to wash out and spent almost 2 months in the hospital. So take your full dose of antibiotics, people. How are we feeling about this one? A little headache? Checking in on your sinus health? Because that is absolutely bonkers. This dude essentially had to have a brain enema because of the filth built up in his dome. That stuff comes back with a vengeance, like he said, if you're not careful. So listen to your local healthcare worker and finish your antibiotics regimen. Coming in at number 2, we've got the suffocation station. In a lot of creepypasta stories, folks who are left near some dangerous chemical or enclosed space often go mad. You know, self-mutilation, murder, hideous mutations, the works. In this story though, the folks put in an unsafe situation don't end up doing a whole lot of that. They just die, and they die quick. We live in a cruel world, and if the folks running companies aren't careful or tend to cut corners, a lot of bad stuff can happen. Take it from Reddit user Animator Spaminator. I heard this from my grandpa. He used to work in the oil/gas industry. His father actually owned the company. Anyways, they had these huge tanks full of some deadly gas that's heavier than oxygen. Some guy went down to measure the size of the tank, suffocated, and died. Another guy found him at the bottom, wanted to help him, and he went down after him, suffocated, died after falling off the ladder down. Third guy does the same. Eventually, my grandpa finds 3 dead bodies at the bottom of a large tank, all having suffocated on this toxic gas. They have vents in these tanks now, which is good. Yeah, the poor grandpa. Imagine strolling into work and discovering not 1, not 2, but 3 dead bodies. All because of an invisible assailant that robbed the oxygen from their lungs. And finally at number 1, we've got the Outback Backpack Killer. If I was ever to visit Australia, I would be on the lookout for killer animals, bugs, and temperatures. In fact, killer people probably wouldn't even cross my mind. However, as this story shows us, murderous lunatics can be anywhere at any time. User Passometer has this story to tell. I met a guy who had been traveling Australia with a couple friends, hitchhiking around as many of us have done. One of his friends told him that they were near his distant uncle's house, whom he'd never met before. He got a phone number from a family member, and as they had hoped, the uncle offered them a place to stay. He picked them up in town and drove them out to his rural property way out in the bush. They said he seemed like a pretty normal guy, friendly and cheery. When it was time to set up a place to sleep, the uncle took them to a closet that was totally full of sleeping bags and bedrolls. They didn't think much of it at the time and all grabbed the kit and set up on the living room floor. They stayed a couple days and nothing out of the ordinary happened, but afterwards the uncle drove them to the bus station and they continued on their way. About a year later, the man was arrested and charged with several counts of murder. He was the man who was picking up young hitchhiking backpackers and slaughtering them. The guy who told me this story was 100% certain he had slept in the sleeping bag of one of his victims. And now this guy has to walk around for the rest of his life with the knowledge that he slept in a death sleeping bag. Definitely the kind of story that ends up as the central focus of a true crime podcast.
Number 5, the fog ghosts of Yellowstone National Park. Now, those of you who have watched me before know that I love a good ghost story or spotting, and I'm thrilled to kick off today with this one. Ghostly figures like to appear in the park when the weather turns cold, especially when temperatures can plummet to like minus 30 degrees. As someone who has been in a cold room that was occupied by ghosts before, and has also experienced being in temperatures around minus 40, I can both validate the statement and shiver at the memory. Our first ghostie is Maddie Culver, a sweet lady who passed during birth on March 2nd of 1989 at the now gone firehole Hotel, once located several miles north of the Old Faithful Inn, and nervously flutters about, heartbroken over not living to see her offspring grow up. When Mrs. Culver died, the hotel's grounds were too frozen to dig her a grave, so Maddie's body was placed in 2 pickle barrels and buried in a snowdrift until spring thaw. Poor thing. Today, not far from her grave, is Dead Maiden Spring, which seems kind of fitting in a morbid way. According to Lee Whittlesley, a park historian, the grave is later fenced and maintained by the wife of a park concessionaire, and Maddie's young daughter was sent to live with relatives. We also have L.R. Piper, a cashier from the First National Bank of St. Mary's, Ohio, who on July 30th of 1890 stepped out of the now-gone Fountain Hotel to enjoy a after-dinner cigar and vanished. Well, if we needed an additional public service announcement that cigars can be bad for your health, there it is. U.S. Army troops stationed in Yellowstone at the time searched for a month for Piper, and his brother-in-law spent the month of September that year looking for him. At one point, he even slept under the stars, hoping that coyote howls would lead him to Piper's remains. It's believed that Piper walked out into the night and inadvertently stumbled into one of the many hot springs that are located nearby. 2 of the hot springs there, Gentian Pool and Deep Blue Geyser, are very large and very deep, and it's believed that a search of them might yield his petrified bones. Charles Phillips is also one that could be doing the haunting, though. He was a ranger stationed at Old Faithful during the winter of 1926 to 27. He died after eating water hemlock that he mistook for wild parsnip. According to Death in Yellowstone, the ranger's body was found on the floor of the ranger station. Investigators found that he had apparently come out of the bedroom into the kitchen and fell forward, hitting his head above his left eye on the table. Dirt on his hands indicated he had crawled on the floor for a while, probably in agony, and he exhibited the vomiting and frothing at the mouth, which are characteristic of hemlock poisoning. Delicious! Number 4, a ghost dog. Mo Luttrell has been a ranger in the USFS for almost 15 years, but this scary story took place during his 3rd year of employment. His station was getting calls about a lone wolf with a collar on hanging around campsites, which he found weird since wolves aren't known to be in the area, but when you work in the field long enough you start to realize anything's possible apparently. Thankfully, no calls had mentioned violent behavior from the animal. So Mo departed from the station around noon to check out the places that the wolf had been sighted, and wandered around for about 3 hours until he took a break for water. When he was getting ready to go again, the wolf, appeared about 20 feet away, trotting near the tree line. It seemed friendly and had the collar, so Mo whistled to it and it bounded over to him. And once the creature got closer, he quickly realized it was just a big dog and not a wolf. And they lived happily ever after. Okay, you should know better than that. Mo radioed in and reported that he had the dog with him, but just as he said those words, the dog took off. He chased the dog through the forest for at least 5 minutes before it slowed down near a rock bed / creek area and started pacing around a spot. Mo got closer and noticed the overgrowth had almost disguised what appeared to be bones. He called it in immediately, and another team was sent to recover the remains. When he went to retrieve the dog, it was just gone. The bones were identified as a teenage male's, dying by a self-inflicted wound to the head. He'd been reported missing in the area way long time ago before Mo had become a ranger, and there had been pretty much no hope of ever finding him. Mo spoke to his mom on the phone, and she asked how he'd found her son. He mentioned the black dog and was met with silence from the mom. After he gave a couple of details about the dog, she quietly explained that her son, who struggled with making connections, had sunk into a deep depression after the death of his best friend, the very dog that led Mo to him. What a very good doggy. Pardon me, I think I have tears in my eyes. Number 3, Bighorn Mountains Mystery. A fun little Reddit tale for y'all. This one comes from user Camel Panda, taking place in July of 1985. His dad was an avid outdoorsman, and together they'd go on many adventures together in the woods. On this particular day, they were hiking down a very steep slope to get to an area of a creek that had been dammed up by beavers, hoping to catch some big trout. Panda had climbed out onto a rock ledge and was looking for a way down when he saw the stock and action of an old rusty rifle sticking out of a tree, where the tree had grown around the barrel years before, about 10 inches above the ground. He and his dad climbed down to check it out, finding a small cave at the base of the rock formation. Inside they found 3 heavy gauge unopened cans of food, an old cast iron pot that had holes rusted all the way through it, a crusty old saddle and bridle set, and a very deteriorated heavy wool blanket rolled up and tied with a leather belt. When they unwrapped the blanket, they found several personal items, including a rusty old cap and ball black powder revolver, a leather satchel with a lead pistol, a powder horn with no black powder in it, tarnished old cartridges, a straight razor, and most unsettling was a shirt with holes in it and over half of it stained in red. The only thing that somewhat dated this fateful campsite were the weapons, both of which were made sometime in the 1870s. There's no way to ever know what happened to the man who owned all this stuff, but the fact that he or someone he knew was obviously targeted twice with either a firearm or arrows, and all his belongings were sitting right where he left them, possibly 100 100 years later, it's kinda highly unlikely he left that area alive. Discovering what amounts to be a 100-year-old crime scene in a very remote wilderness freaked out Camo, and rightfully so. Sadly, I don't know what he and his dad did with what they found, but I'm hoping the family of the deceased has been given closure. Number 2, Glenn and Bessie. It's been 73 years since Glenn and Bessie Hyde vanished on a honeymoon voyage through the Grand Canyon, but what exactly happened to them is still a mystery. Some folks say that Bessie wanted to be the first woman to boat through the Grand Canyon, and she almost made it. Bessie and Glenn were honeymooning in northern Arizona at the Grand Canyon when they vanished. They were traveling down the Colorado River by scow in October of 1928, and for reference, since I didn't know this before, a scow is a flat-bottomed boat with sloping ends that was a lighter option for those wanting to, explore. Glenn had run tough rivers before, but Bessie was a, relatively boating newbie. The couple ran across other boaters a few weeks before their disappearance, who said they got the feeling that Bessie wanted to turn back, but Glenn was pushing her on, determined. If they completed the trip successfully, they could go on a paid lecture tour. So this trip was more than just fun, there was actually money at stake. Cut to several months later, the Hyde's boat was discovered that winter, seemingly undisturbed. It was upright and full of supplies, but the couple was gone. Now there are many theories about what happened to the Hydes. Did they disembark and try a too difficult side hike? Did they have an argument that turned violent? Or were they abducted? There are conflicting reports about what happened to them, and more than one Bessie Hyde sighting in the years that followed. A massive surge made national headlines, but never turned up a trace of the pair. So, did they abandon the scow and attempt the brutal hike out to the rim? A former whitewater guide who has recited the Hyde legend for years has actually written a book about the disappearance, called Sunk Without a Sound, The Tragic Colorado River Honeymoon of Glenn and Bessie Hyde. It's by writer Brad Dibbuk, and is one of 2 recent books about the mystery. A veteran of over more than 25 years as a boatman on the Colorado River, Brad has also worked as a commercial guide on major rivers from Alaska to Tanzania. With his fellow boatman Jerry Ledbetter, Brad built a replica of the Hyde's heavy wooden scow. A boxy boat, then common to the northwest, that is said to resemble a floating coffin. So that's not ominous at all. In 1996, the duo launched themselves onto the river to find out what really happened to the Hydes. From historical documents, the writers found that Glenn's plan was that, he and his young bride would run the canyon, then, like I said before, go on that lecture circuit and make some money, which, hey, gotta make it somehow. In the Hyde's time, like now, outdoor daring was chic. Charles Lindbergh had recently crossed the Atlantic, George Mallory had disappeared on Everest. The public craved more heroes of this sort of type. Hey, we gotta follow a trend somehow. In those days, though, the Grand Canyon was a hero-making run. There were no commercial river trips. The rapids were the domain of seasoned explorers and professional expeditions, so not honeymooners in a homemade boat. Brad interviewed participants on a 1971 commercial boat trip, during which an elderly woman announced over the evening campfire she was Bessie Hyde. So he asked her, haha, what'd you do with Glenn? Just as a joke. And she responded, I killed him, without even looking up. Apparently the honeymooners had a fight, she impaled Glenn and hiked out to Peach Springs, Arizona, then caught a bus back east to start a new life. A series of equally tantalizing twists occurred in the ensuing years, and Brad investigated them all, because that lead is just nutso. A tiny, explosive pierced skull was found in the garage of a deceased river guide. Was it Glenn's? A veteran river guide with a secretive streak passed away, and it was discovered her real name was Bessie, and the Hyde's marriage certificate was found in her belongings, but none of these have actually had any sort of conclusive ending, so I guess we'll never know what happened. Number 1, the Hoya Forest in Romania. So this forest in Transylvania has been called one of the world's most haunted places after a series of paranormal activities and strange occurrences. I swear I did look up how to pronounce it, so if I butchered it, I apologize. Granted, being located in Transylvania, home to all things ooky spooky vampire gothic, probably only helps with the rumors. There have been many unsettling tales that have been told of the Romanian forest for hundreds of years, making it nearly impossible to separate fact from, fiction. Located in northwestern Romania, it's known as the Bermuda Triangle of Romania, since strange occurrences are said to have occurred here. Kind of like a shepherd who's said to have disappeared with a flock of 200 sheep, and a young girl who disappeared only to emerge 5 years later without having aged. However, one of the strangest events that ever happened in the forest comes from the tale of a woman who disappeared with a 15th century coin in her pocket. After a significant amount of time had passed, the woman returned, as if no time had passed, with the same coin. Its reputation as a home for the paranormal and alien encounters is heightened by its eerie atmosphere of twisted skeletal trees that span across 700 acres. This was due to the reported UFO sightings that were famously photographed in the 1960s by biologist Alexandru Sift, which showed flying objects and gave the forest a reputation as a place for strange and unexplainable events. Even the forest trees themselves hold an enigma, as these 200-year-old trees seem to be young, and most of them are twisted at the trunk or unusual in shape. Most of the paranormal activity seems to be concentrated in that particular part of the forest, which is free of vegetation and formed into a perfect circle. The soil of this vegetation-free area has been tested, and no anomalies were found that would prevent the growth of any plant life. Visitors often report feeling intense feelings of anxiety and the feeling of being constantly watched. As the forest's website warns, and locals tend to stay away because they fear that if they enter, they will never find their way out. There are many first-hand reports from people who visited the forest and left with strange symptoms which range from a mild case of unease to physical symptoms such as severe rashes, headaches, and even burns.
Number 5. The Walking Dead. My first true tale of phantasmic terror comes to us from Reddit user Jalcott. Answering a question posed in the thread, nurses and doctors of Reddit, what's the weirdest and most paranormal thing you've ever experienced? Hospitals already seem pretty haunted as is, so it's no surprise that there was so many good answers. But Jalcott stood out. Take a listen. I'm a psychiatric nurse, and early on in my career, I worked at a residential mental health facility. One of our residents was an elective mute, which means that he didn't talk, but there was no medical reasoning as to why. He had spoken earlier in his life, and in fact seemed quite normal back then, with the exception of being close to 7 feet tall. He'd been raised in the deep south and joined the army when he was 19, but one night he vanished. He was declared AWOL, and eventually he was declared missing, and later officially declared dead. However, 10 years later, a 7-foot-tall man walked into a Virginia hospital ER in my part of the Midwest and said to the receptionist, "My name is Marion Deschênes, and I've been dead for 10 years. And according to the Redditor, those were the last words he ever spoke to anyone. He had shown up to the hospital covered in dust and wearing an old uniform that he'd been wearing the night he vanished. His social security had not been used at all, and he had no ID on him whatsoever. However, via fingerprints, they were able to identify him. The family was notified, but they said they had already grieved their lost man and that whoever was claiming to be him simply wasn't, and asked to never be contacted again." The nurse went on to add that Marion would pace all day, every day, moving his mouth in a way that looked like he was muttering to himself, but nothing came out when he moved his lips. He had an unnerving habit of throwing his head back with his mouth wide open as if he was laughing hysterically, but not so much as a breath could ever be heard. The nurse said she tried talking to him almost daily, and he would appear to listen, but only reacts by periodically throwing his head back in that laughter-mimicking way of his. Various medications and treatment plans were pursued, but nothing ever affected him. Therapy was tried as well, but all that would happen was Marion would just grin and start pacing again. She goes on to say that on her last day, she saw Marion pacing in the parking lot, throwing back his head to laugh. She closes by saying all those years she'd wondered, was he a ghost? And all those years later, she still doesn't know. Click through and listen to as many top 5 scary videos as your ears can handle. Moving on. Number 4, the things that go bunk in the night. Now you would never ever believe this, but our next story comes from Reddit as well. A similar thread, a similar question. What's the most paranormal thing you've ever experienced? Lots of good ones to pick from, but this one from Mad Rampager really stood out for me. I used to be in the military. The training camp bunk that we lived in was said to be haunted. Occasionally, our stuff would go missing and reappear in weird places, like under our bed or inside a bag that we'd zipped up and stuff. No big deal, right? Weird things happen, and I mean human error and all that. Well, then came the instance that freaked everybody out. It was night after lights out, and my friend was on his phone texting his girlfriend. Most of us had been drifting off to sleep, and we were lying on our beds when suddenly my friend heard the shuffling of feet from the corridor. So, thinking that it was our sergeant, he quickly hid his phone under his pillow, rolled over on his side, and tried to get to sleep. What happened next still chills me to the bone to this day. While he pretended to sleep, he heard someone right behind him at the other end of the bed saying, "Don't worry, you can continue to pretend to sleep." I could have dismissed this as a figment of his imagination, except me and 5 other people around him heard it. Creepier still, there was no one there. And weirdly, it sounded like the voice of a young girl that had said it. For reference, our camp was in the middle of an island and was set up away from the main admin building. The island had been closed by the government for army training purposes for the past 15 years, so there were definitely no civilians around, let alone any children. To make matters freakier, when we came back from our weekend home leave, there was a bunch of hair on his bed, neatly bundled up, long and jet black, and underneath his pillow was a note. Remember me? Now, as I said, we're in the middle of a forest, in the middle of an island, and at that point in time, there were no female recruits whatsoever on the island. Our bunks were locked for the weekend, and the duty sergeant had no idea what had happened. We never spoke about it again after that night, and it still chills me every time I think about it. Number 3, old friends. Our next story is from a Reddit thread asking, "What's your ghost story?" And I gotta point this one out just because it was too funny, but the original poster included the title in brackets, "Serious?" to deter any would-be paranormal pranksters. Just serious ghost stories, please. Luckily, Redditors obliged. User Barbed Cats shared this terrifying tale. When I was 37, I went to my high school reunion. I flew into the nearest airport and rented a car. The distance was about 35 miles through a very rural and almost abandoned part of the country. About 3 miles outside of town, I see someone on the side of the road flagging me down. Up in the North Woods, no one ever leaves someone else stranded, and it would turn out that the guy standing there was somebody I'd actually been to school with, my old friend Jim. Jim gets in the car and we start talking, catching up. I hadn't seen him in 20 years, but he still looked the same, maybe just a little bit older. We get to town and I ask him if he wants to come to the reunion with me and have a drink. He says no, just take me back home. Jim's parents had lived only a few blocks from my grandmother's, and I turned in that direction, but he said to take him to the part of town that really was just the outskirts, up by the fairground and the cemetery. There was a mobile home park out there, and I figured that must be where he lived. When we reached the end of the turn, he said, "Just drop me off here. It was nice to see you again," and he walked off into the night. So I went to the high school reunion, met up with some old classmates, and we start to talk. Now please understand me here. I am stone cold sober, nor do I ever take anything harder than soda. Tired after a 13-hour flight, but I was completely sober. As we were talking about who was showing up and who wasn't, I mentioned to my old classmate that I just picked Jim up a few miles off east of town and had dropped him up by the fairgrounds. Now for some reason everyone got really quiet. Even the guy belting out karaoke stopped, and my cousin went white as a shirt. Barb. Jim died 8 years ago. Rolled his car. I start to feel really dizzy, and I go out to the car to take some deep breaths and decide whether or not I'm going crazy. And there on the seat was a newspaper printed 8 years ago containing Jim's obituary. I still have that damn paper. Every now and again I take it out to stare at it, and I still wonder just what the hell happened that night. Number 2. Ghost on the Line. The next story comes to us from a thread asking law enforcement officers of Reddit what is the creepiest call that you've ever been on. We got a very creepy answer from user Smoky Bonaparte sharing this creepy little tale. The Redditor writes, 911 dispatcher calling in. We received a call from an elderly lady who had trouble breathing. I had taken several calls from her before and her husband in the past, so I recognized the voice. I dispatched an ambulance to her residence and held her on the line trying to keep her calm while the ambulance was responding. Ambulances advised that they had a 15-minute ETA as she was in a very rural part of West Virginia. I'm talking to her just about her husband and how she was doing, and just making pretty standard small talk with her. The ambulance arrives and I let them know that she is in severe respiratory distress, and I still had her on the line. I let her know the ambulance is coming to her door to go answer the door, and she says okay and hangs up the phone. Oh, that's pretty normal, right? Well, here's where it gets very weird. The EMT and paramedic on scene call back about a minute after, and they say that no one is answering the door. We have a sheriff in the area pulling on scene about that time. The sheriff unit confirmed the address, and he's breaching the door to make access to the PT. 5 minutes go by and the paramedic on scene radios to ask me who called. I tell him it was the elderly woman who lived on residence. He tells me he's going to call this in and he needs to speak with my shift supervisor. We get him over to the supervisor, and the supervisor confirms the same information I relayed, that it was all correct, and asks what's going on. Apparently the old woman had been dead for a while and was already in full rigor mortis. They thought I was wrong on the caller, but the other dispatchers played it back for them and confirmed it was the old woman who called. The ambulance transferred the hospital and we got the same calls and disbelief from the doctors. But I took a call from a ghost that day. Number 1. Uninvited guest. Closing off our list is this story which chilled my spine like Sub-Zero. Coming to us from user Parole Model, which hey, by the way, love the pun. It was from an Ask Reddit thread asking, what's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you? Lots and lots and lots of good ones, but this one took the cake. So lend an ear. I used to visit my friend at her house out in a rural farming area before she moved. I'd sleep over a lot and we'd just hang out and draw. I usually slept in the living room and on the couch, and there were 2 mirrors in the room that were fairly close to the TV. When the TV was off and I was walking by, I started seeing shadows move behind me. I thought it might just be something off the TV screen, and then one evening I walked into the living room to get my sketchbook so I could sketch in her bedroom. I bent over and picked it up, stood up straight, and I looked in the mirror and saw a man behind me. A man standing in the hallway leading to the living room. He was average height, bald, and a bit old. I turned to look at him and no one was there. I turned to look at the mirror again and he was gone. I felt more than a little spooked. Another time, we were just sitting in the living room and we heard what sounded like a kid's footsteps running across upstairs quickly. She had 2 adult siblings, but they were out at work leaving us all alone. Around that time, I decided to sleep in my friend's room instead of the living room, only to wake up in the middle of the night to see 4 posters slowly get peeled off the wall. No, it wasn't just them falling and dragging each other down. It looked as if someone was carefully unsticking the tape and removing them. The next morning, my friend put them back up saying, "Well, I need to get some better tape." She and her family eventually moved out because they couldn't afford to keep living there anymore. We'd never really talked about anything that had happened in that house, as if talking about it might actually make it worse. But after she moved, I finally confronted her and said it. I said, "Dude, your house was haunted. I hope you knew that." She replied, "Yeah, we knew it was. Some guy and his granddaughter used to live there, but he took her life and then took his own. So it was probably them or something. I never told you because I didn't want to scare you." Later, she would dig out a copy of a news article she got from a local paper about the crime. The picture that went with the article was the exact man I saw all those years ago. Okay. I gotta start looking at some of the cute cat picture subreddits, or maybe ones with like little monkeys going on adventures after that. Need to clear myself out.
Number 5, my mom left me a set of tapes to watch after she died. Our first tale today was written in October of 2020 by user TJ Leah. It is narrated by a character named Nick, whose mother passed away when they were after a short and awful bout with cancer. Now this tale unfolds through a series of videos, milestones, in his life, all curated by his late mother, Leonora Stankowski. A seemingly ordinary concept, capturing moments on tape. Well, it kinda takes a haunting turn as Nick confronts the spectral legacy of his family. Leonora's videos, a loving gesture frozen in time, serve as a poignant connection between a mother and her son. The milestones, from the loss of a tooth to the trials of adolescence, are immortalized on film. A peculiar ritual, a glimpse into a life cut short by illness, reveals a mother's undying love for her crown prince. Yet beneath the warmth lies a chilling undercurrent that Nick is yet to comprehend. As the narrative unfolds, we are taken on a roller coaster of emotions. Nick's life is marked by tragedy and eerie encounters, all captured in the foreboding glow of the milestone tapes. The sinister entity that lurks in the background, whispered about but seldom seen, becomes an ominous presence in the narrative. The turning point arrives when Nick faces his own brush with mortality, a moment captured in a tape that unveils a grotesque figure accompanying his mother. A chilling revelation ensues, unraveling a familial curse that transcends generations, passing from father to daughter, mother to son. The entity, ancient and malevolent, feeds on misfortune, and it kinda plagues the Stankowski lineage. Now Leonora desperately attempted to break the cycle, and this was encapsulated in the final tape, but it casts an unsettling shadow over Nick's existence. This entity, drawn to the vulnerability of broken bones and shattered lives, becomes an ever-present specter, and a curse that Nick is now tasked with navigating, armed with only the tapes and the weight of generational anguish. The narrative's intensity peaks as Nick, now a father himself, grapples with the realization that his daughter, Phoebe, is destined to inherit the family curse. The story pivots on a delicate balance between the supernatural and the human, blurring the lines between nightmare and reality. In a chilling revelation, Leonora imparts a solemn duty on Nick to protect Phoebe at any cost, regardless of the toll it takes on others. The narrative leaves us on the precipice of uncertainty, as Nick contemplates the gravity of his responsibility, haunted by the lurking presence that persists in the periphery of his world. Honestly, I loved reading this one, so I highly recommend. Number 4, my girlfriend would answer one question every night in her sleep. This next story is courtesy of author The Buffed, and while it's since reached multiple installments, today I'll just be discussing part 1 and leave you anticipating more parts. So, picture this. You meet somebody special. Things move quickly, and then the nocturnal peculiarities commence. Now, before you dismiss this as just another spooky tale, let's dissect the nuances that make this narrative more than just a run-of-the-mill scary story. Our protagonist begins innocently enough, spending nights with his new flame, but the tranquility of these evenings is shattered when his partner, in a half-asleep state, demands to be asked a question each night. A seemingly, harmless quirk, right? Wrong. It unfolds like a cryptic ritual, an unsettling dance where questions must be posed and answers extracted, if you will. You kinda get like a surreal descent into a psychological labyrinth. The nightly interrogations become more than just a quirky little bedtime routine. They morph into a haunting journey into the unknown. The girlfriend, blissfully unaware during the day, becomes a conduit to a realm where questions hold an eerie power, and the answers aren't exactly what you want to hear. As the narrative unfolds, the tension tightens like a coiled spring. Now the protagonist, caught in a web of I don't know what, grapples with the surreal demands of his nighttime interrogator. The questions evolve from the mundane to the existential, unveiling a cosmic horror that transcends, anything I can explain. The climax, though, kind of takes a bit of an unexpected turn. We find out a very chilling revelation about the demise of our narrator's partner, and our protagonist is kind of pushed to the brink. It kind of also pivots from the supernatural to deeply human as he's contemplating the actions that kind of go against everything we want to believe in. And then just as the darkness is threatening to consume everything, we get a little twist, a change if you will, perhaps even a glimmer of hope. The girlfriend is no longer a mere victim of the night, she's now a partner in unraveling the mysteries that plague the shared existence. It's kind of a hopeful note. Now, as we ponder the implications of this crazy tale, you can be left with a lingering unease. What if the things that go bump in the night are not supernatural entities, but the unresolved questions that haunt our relationships? What if, in confronting the unknown, we find not terror, but the resilience of human spirit? And so, fellow folks out there in the vast digital wilderness, I leave you with this. What if, in the silence of the night, the questions we leave unanswered become the ghosts that linger, haunting our minds? I know I wanted to get kind of deep with it. Let me have my moment, okay? Number 3, the orangutans are skeptical of the changes in their cages. I love how much that rhymes, by the way. So folks, you know the drill by now. This nightmare is thanks to Zachary Adams, and let's just jump right into it. So we're gonna delve into this cryptic tale of a man caught in the web of his own perception. Kind of makes us, come face to face with a surreal narrative that challenges the very fabric of reality. The protagonist in this one, a self-proclaimed clam in the grand scheme of existence, weaves a narrative around the mundane aspects of his life. His inability to discern change, a quirk of his psyche, becomes a lens through which we explore the unsettling twists of his reality. Now, we meet a psychologist, a seemingly benevolent guide, and they kind of take on an eerie transformation, revealing layers of deception and manipulation that fracture the protagonist's understanding of his own existence. Now the tale unfolds in disjointed revelations, with each layer peeling back to expose a more disconcerting truth, kinda like an onion. The courtroom, a bastion of justice, morphs into a surreal arena where the boundaries between guilt and innocence blur. The protagonist's journey through psychiatric evaluations become a descent into a labyrinth of distorted perceptions, or even the physical environment becomes quite the enigma, if you will. The motif of stake, a seemingly trivial detail, evolves into a symbol of existential dissonance. The protagonist's insistence on the routine comfort of stake serves as a poignant metaphor for the human desire to cling to familiarity in the face of an ever-shifting reality. But then we get a little twist. Stake was never truly what it seemed to be, and it kinda shatters the illusions of stability, leaving the protagonist grasping at the fragments of his own understanding. I'm not gonna go into detail, but trust me, that twist got me. The psychologist's dual identity, donning disguises of both mentor and tormentor, mirrors a delicate dance between trust and betrayal that threads throughout the narrative. The laughter that echoes through the revelation of the protagonist's grim reality is a chilling crescendo, underscoring the fragility of the human, mind. As we traverse the corridors of the protagonist's mind, we are confronted with the unsettling notion that our perceptions, our realities, maybe they're veiled in layers of illusion. The casual interchange between the protagonist and the psychologist, that's kind of full of cryptic references and philosophical undertones, mirrors the style of a mind grappling with the complexities of its own existence. In the end, as the protagonist confronts the horrifying truth of his own conception, both literally and metaphorically, we're kind of left with a lingering sense of unease. This whole narrative, it kind of invites us to question the nature of reality and the fragility of our perceptions. In the words of Shel Silverstein, it's all the same to a clam, but for the protagonist, the revelation of his own reality is a harrowing journey into the depths of the unknown. Number 2, I listened to a true crime podcast about myself. So next up we've got a scary story courtesy of one Robert Mort, which I love the name, death, mort. Okay, that's my French coming out. So, we've all listened to podcasts, right? We love them. I have my favorites. But for this narrator, listening to it during a nightly stroll kind of transforms into quite a new reality. So, as they're immersing themselves in a true crime podcast, not my cup of tea, but do as you will, they realize, wait a minute, this sounds familiar. The podcast's ominous tale, delivered with an eerie calmness, begins to intertwine with the protagonist's reality, like with the small town, the local store, the young student, all elements that echoes the threads of their own existence. Like, okay, that's me. Is this a coincidence? The protagonist's emotional journey is palpable as the podcast delves into the mysterious disappearance of a girl named Sarah Campbell. The parallels between the podcast narrative and our protagonist's life become increasingly uncanny. It's like, okay, this has gotta be me. Can't say I've ever had that happen yet, but who knows. The revelation that the victim shares the protagonist's name adds a layer of existential unease, as if the fabric of their own reality is unraveling faster than a ball of yarn. The narrative crescendos with the discovery of a pair of red Converse sneakers, mirroring the protagonist's own choice of footwear. Like for me, it'd be pink ankle boots. The podcast's ability to weave a tale that aligns so closely with the protagonist's experiences amplifies a sense of dread, inviting them and the audience to question the boundaries between fiction and reality. As the protagonist grapples with the unnerving possibility that the podcast is narrating their own story, the tension mounts. The arrival of a black SUV, the revelation of a registered offender named John Kelly, and the protagonist's frantic attempt to escape, all of this contributes to the sense of impending danger. You know, that little yikes feeling in the back of your head? Also, the inclusion of Gabe, the protagonist's boyfriend, adds a twist that further blurs the line between, hey, is this my life? Gabe's unexpected appearance in the podcast narrative, coupled, with the revelation of a fabricated story about the protagonist's desire to run away, kinda shatters our narrator's sense of trust and stability. It's like, okay, well, game over for me. Now this podcast, with its hypnotic storytelling and ominous foreshadowing, becomes a malevolent force, seemingly orchestrating the protagonist's fate. The disconcerting blend of podcast narration and real-life events creates a narrative hall of mirrors, where truth and illusion are kind of dancing together in a haunting tandem. Now our protagonist tries to escape through a window at this point, fueled by a desperate need to distance themselves from the encroaching darkness, and it leaves the audience suspended in an unsettling denouement, if you will. Number 1, I just took a DNA test. Turns out I'm 100% in over my head. Look, I'm not the biggest fan of the concept of big companies owning part of my DNA, so while I didn't need the story from Sleepy Hollow 101 to scare me, maybe it'll chill some of y'all. So, once again, in today's day and age, who hasn't bought an Ancestry DNA kit apparently? Well, for this narrator, a seemingly innocent decision to explore their genetic makeup kind of unfolded into a perplexing tale that challenges, yeah, you guessed it, reality. So it began, they bought their test, promising insight into their heritage and the possibility to connect with long-lost kin. Because, who needs another cousin? It kind of takes a bit of a turn though when the option to share DNA data with law enforcement materializes. A choice made with, a noble intention to aid in solving crimes and bringing justice to victims, but little does the storyteller anticipate the crazy web that's going to unravel as a consequence of this seemingly innocent decision. The revelation that the storyteller's DNA is a partial match to an unidentified deceased woman kind of thrusts them into a, situation where we're kind of like, what the heck? The quest to identify this Jane Doe leads to a disconcerting revelation that the DNA match points to the storyteller's own family member, Bex. The ensuing discovery of 2 more exact matches to additional Jane and John Does compounds the mystery, creating a tapestry of inexplicable connections. Now, our storyteller grapples with the surreal nature of these revelations, seeking logical explanations that elude even the investigators. The absolute absurdity of the situation is magnified by the nonchalant response of Bex and Aunt Linda, who dismiss the DNA matches with laughter and shrugged shoulders, kind of making us go, huh? As the narrative unfolds, the disappearance of Bex, Ethan, and Aunt Linda adds another layer of complexity to the conundrum. Now our storyteller, caught in a bewildering whirlwind of events, oscillates between waiting for their return and the gnawing realization that the fabric of their family might be woven with the threads of quite the mystery. Now the police are equally as confounded by all of this and the disappearances, so they turn to the storyteller for any kind of information that might help, and the family's account of a prolonged vacation and the lack of substantial leads, yeah, the investigation kind of takes a turn. So in this crazy story, the boundaries, once again, between the reality and the inexplicable kind of turn into a gray area, leaving the storyteller and us suspended in, limbo. The quest for ancestral knowledge transforms into a chilling exploration of the unknown, where the threads of family history become kind of intertwined with a cosmic riddle that defies the conventions of reason. Now, as the narrative concludes, the unresolved mystery lingers, casting a shadow over the storyteller's quest for identity. The enigma of the DNA matches and the vanishing of family members kind of remains shrouded in ambiguity. Located in Wallace, Idaho, the Jameson Saloon and Inn, or the Jameson Inn Restaurant and Saloon, as apparently they're called on Facebook these days, is one of the most haunted places in all of Idaho. According to IdahoHauntedHouses.com, that's a real site, the saloon dates back to 1892, and there are reports of multiple spirits inhabiting the property, including one named Maggie, and another one named Ollie. Now Maggie likes to give hugs, she likes to touch people on the shoulder, pat them on the back, very affectionate. According to another local news source, Maggie perished in a fire after attending a football game with her friends, and her spirit returned to the inn because it was the first place she felt at home, which is kinda sad. Now Ollie, on the other hand, he's a bit of a prankster. He likes to mess with the lights, move things, even make weird noises. And while there are quite a few creepy stairways at the inn, none are creepier than the stairs leading to the basement. The question is, does an evil spirit loom down there? Sure looks like it. Like when I was looking at pictures of this place, it looks like the part in a horror movie where every character should just turn around and book it out of there. Other occurrences here have included lights that go on and off by themselves, shadows, objects being moved, smells of perfume, and the sounds of a party happening late at night. When doing a bit more research into the property, one news outlet found one particular comment unsettling, as it appeared to be from a former employee. There is a very evil spirit in the basement, and he does not like you doing substances in the basement with your friends. Well, apparently this evil spirit wants to keep the basement up to date with DARE guidelines. Now, this supposed former employee also went on to say that they actually had a medium inspect the property, and the medium confirmed that this spirit was killed in a gambling brawl and then carried down to the tunnels. What happened next? We don't know, and I don't think I want to know. At the age of more than 110 years old, Willard Library is the oldest public library building in the state of Indiana. And yes, it has quite the haunted basement. According to reports from visitors, some of the most frequent encounters with the legendary Lady in Grey have occurred in the reading room, which is in the basement. Now, the first reported incident happened like 60 plus years ago to a library employee who trekked through the snowy night for his nightly duty. Since then, countless other employees and patrons have reported seeing this apparition, each giving an eerily similar description. The Grey Lady ghost, oh, I love mysterious ladies, was the first reported to have been seen in the late 1930s, though. Specifically 1937, a janitor claimed to have seen a ghostly veiled lady dressed in glowing gray standing before him while he was on duty. Now, he was more shocked when he was able to bend down and saw that even her shoes were gray. Now, before the janitor could recover from the frightening event, the lady went poof, she disappeared. Now, since that time, those looking and not looking for the apparition have reported unexplained events and sights. Now, unless my research is wrong, the Grey Lady was last reportedly sighted on August 10th of 2010 in the basement hallway by the assistant librarian. Psychics visiting the library in 2007 said they were able to verify that a ghost had been there, and that paranormal investigative groups, well, they brought in their equipment to look for it. But there has been, I think around that time, several library employees who reported seeing the ghost. Now, during a visit to the library, lecturers from the University of Southern Indiana say they saw the ghost peering into water. Now, policemen once upon a time, responding to a security alarm, spotted not one but two ghosts at the library. Now, a patron reported an encounter with the Grey Lady in the elevator, and a local weathercaster also reported an encounter with the spirit. Now, every year, hundreds of people look for the Grey Lady during October, during some ghost tours that are sponsored by the library. 800 curious individuals attended the first such tour in the late 1990s, and it's been a popular annual event ever since. Sign me up. Whisperings of old age terrors, the prowling of ghosts, and stories of strange occurrences have been passed down for generations, giving Klamath Falls a spooky edge, especially when the leaves start to turn and the chilly nights grow darker. Some of the more widely known spooky spots in the area include Linkville Playhouse, where the ghost of one of the theater's former actors is rumored to haunt the halls. Now, there's also the bizarre phenomenon at Gravity Hill, and the strange activity at the old Baldwin Hotel, which is now a museum. But none of those have haunted basements, so remember them for a future video. Today, we're talking about the Old House on Pear Street, which honestly sounds like a movie title. Michael Gravitt is a paranormal investigator and the founder of Paranormal Sightings, which is a team of local ghost hunters that provides free investigations to anybody who thinks they might have a disembodied spirit, or multiple spirits, living amongst them. One of his investigations has been at his cousin's place on Pear Street over in the Falls. Now, according to county tax records, the house was built in 1937, and while it has a beautiful charm in the morning light, it looks a teensy-weensy bit unsettling from the outside when the sun goes down. So the owner of the house, Christina Hansaker, has lived in the home with her husband Anthony and their 4 offspring for about like 5 years, as of the time of the storytelling. Now, they bought the house from their pastor and his wife, and that's when they first learned about the paranormal activity. Christina said the pastor told her that he and his wife would constantly hear boots stomping up and down the stairs as if someone was in the house. And this kind of spooked her. And although she didn't experience anything strange in the beginning, she was like, "Hey, cuz, can you come just do like a little safety check?" So Gravitt and his team came to the house with their equipment. We're talking night vision cameras, digital recorders, walkie-talkies, heat signature rays. This is the thing that emits an electromagnetic field, then beeps if there's any disturbance. So everybody got to work hunting ghosts, creeping around the house in the dark with the devices. The team was asking, like, "Hey, if you're here, if you're haunting here, could you just like say hello? Make yourself known." And one of the recordings Gravitt picked up that day was the sound of a weapon being fired in the basement. Another was of a man's voice, also coming from the basement. Now, one of the recordings that had been recovered Yeah, it was the guy down in the basement saying, "Get out of my house." Now, nobody knew what to make of this. Nobody knew, like, who could this be? We know this place is haunted, but we don't know who it could be. But then one day, a couple of months after the initial investigation, something weird happened. Christina recounted a stranger stopping by the house while she was having a yard sale. Now, the woman, who said she used to live in the house, came to tell her, yeah, this place is haunted. Christina said that she proceeded to tell her the history of the house, and it literally scared her out of her wits. The woman told her of strange nights when the family would be awoken by phantom knocks at the door. It was consistent knocking that would cause the entire family to get out of bed, walk down the stairs, and open the door, only to find darkness. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Don't worry, there is more. Now, what the strange woman told Christina was unsettling, but what scared her most was how the story coincided with the recordings from the basement. So as Christina was told the story, apparently 2 sons of the man who built the house in 1937 were living together in the house, possibly in the 50s or 60s. One of the men was a truck driver and was constantly on the road, and the other apparently went down into the basement one night and took his own life. Now, Gravitt said, based on what he found, from the sound he got on the recording, it sounds like the butt of a weapon hit the floor and the barrel went into somebody's mouth. Now, once it all started to sink in, Christina began to accept the house might be haunted by the man who took his own life in the basement all those years ago. Christina said she spoke to the man. She told him, like, I'm okay with you being in the house, but like, please leave my family alone. I just want to live in harmony. You can exist, I can exist. We can coexist. Well, time went on, more things began to happen. The family's dog would regularly bark at one particular corner of the house for no reason, which, yeah, drives you crazy. And in the hallway, whenever Christina would hang a picture on the wall, it would come right down. As if, somebody just didn't want it there. I'm just hoping her family finds peace soon. In a video posted to TikTok, Madison Heinzen took viewers on a tour of the basement in the old Arnold estate in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Now, this home was built in 1736 and sits on more than 8 acres of wooded property. Now, this estate was a site of tragedy and sorrow for 8 generations of the Arnold family before a new family, the Perrons, bought the home in 1970. And it was their decade-long stay that launched the home into paranormal infamy and inspired The Conjuring. Now, Heinzen's parents, Corey and Jennifer, purchased the house in 2019, and Heinzen went on to explain in her video that the home was actually a daycare in the 1980s, and parts of the center are still in the basement and scattered throughout the house. The most unnerving thing is a toy box, where daycare attendants drew a lady who appears to have a broken neck. Did anybody see the ghost of Bathsheba swinging in the tree? Now, not much is known about the daycare or how long it operated, but Heinzen says all the parents withdrew all their clients from the center on the same day. Probably because of all the paranormal activity around the property. And finally for today, hiding away in the basement of the Riverton Museum is perhaps the creepiest doll in all of Wyoming. Its appearance is so unsettling that even museum employees are visibly reluctant to touch or hold it. Now, this doll's name is Amelia. She's one of those old-fashioned oilcloth dolls with what is still a pretty pink dress. Part of it's her hair, like I didn't know she had human hair before, and that makes it really creepy. He's also just not like a fan of touching the dishwater white oilcloth skin. He's like, I don't know how to describe it. The arms and legs are a puffy gray mess and it's just disturbing. And what's even more disturbing is the doll's face. While her face paint is still clear, dirt has smudged her forehead with strange circular lines that look kind of occult-like. Also, her nose is fallen off and it's just a dirt smudge, and also the mouth is ringed with dirt. Now, we do have a story. There was a museum worker years ago who was assembling the dolls in a crib. She had just started prepping this doll, putting it in its place, kind of had it folded up to work on the shawl, and as she was pulling the shawl on for Amelia, she just wanted to straighten it up, she heard someone upstairs in the museum, a young voice, having a screaming fit of some kind. Now, the commotion just kept going and going, on and on, until the worker finally decided to go upstairs, see for herself what on earth is going on up here. Well, the minute she headed upstairs, the wailing and kicking and screaming just stopped. Everything went silent. So, she got up the top of the stairs. She looked around the museum, looking for the family with like the noisy but now silent human, but nobody was there. So she walked to the front office to ask, like, hey, what's with all the ruckus? And her coworkers were kind of confused by her question. They were like, it's been quiet up here. She was like, no, like the screaming person, just like a minute ago. And they're like, I'm not sure what you mean. No one's been in today. Eep.